Okay, good evening everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regular council meeting of May the 28th. And as we begin, I would like to formally acknowledge the Sooke peoples upon whose lands we are gathered today and upon whose territory our municipality resides, acknowledging both their history and their long-standing connection to the lands and sea as well as their governance structure. So Council, we have an agenda here in front of us. There's a couple of changes that we need to make to the order. So the public hearing for, which is item 8.1, will need to move to immediately after approval of the agenda. So it'll go item 5, approval of the agenda, then 8.1, then 6, leading into the delegations, and then 7. And then after 7, I would like to move 10.1, the Sooke Seniors Project, upwards. So that'll go before the bylaw section of item 9. So 10.1 will follow item 7, and the public hearing of 8.1 will come after 5. Does that make sense to everybody? So motion to approve by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Casper. Thank you. Any questions about that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so that moves us into the public hearing then of 8.1. I've been advised that the address on the agenda is incorrect. The rest of the materials is correct, but it should be 7044 Maple Park, pardon me, it should be 7044 Maple Park Terrace, not 7004, so 7044. But in terms of all the other reports and advertisements, the address was in fact correct. So I'll turn this over to staff then, who will be leading off the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. Let's make sure that the slides are in order. If you just give me a second. Again, thank you, Your Worship. The District of Sooke has received an application to amend the zoning of 7044 Maple Park Terrace from Spiritwood Estates Comprehensive Zone, which is commonly known as the CD9, to small lot residential zone R3, and 7002 Brailsford Place from rural residential to RU4 to small lot residential R3. The amendment is proposed for the remaining lands currently included in the Viewpoint Property Project.
Point it back at the laptop of your shoulder. There you go.
Technology ain't it grand. As you can see, the property is defined as part of Section 21, and the legal descriptions in the addresses are in your package. The applicant proposes a less dense development than what is currently permitted in the CD9 zone, with the registration of a covenant restricting lot sizes to a minimum of 500 square meters, except for 20 of those lots which may be smaller. The applicant proposes to reduce the number of proposed lots from approximately 400 to 137 for producing a neighborhood development while offering considerable parkland, playground, trail dedications, as well as a contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. The property at 7044 Maple Park Terrace is located within the sewer service area. The property at 7002 at this point is not within the SSA and is subject to an inclusion application under a separate agenda item. Both properties are served by CRD water. To meet the policies of the official plan, staff recommend that prior to final adoption of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, the owner enter into a Section 219 covenant with the district to secure cash contribution to the district's Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, parkland dedication, and improvements as previously stated, and a minimum lot size restriction. All these were proposed by the applicant. The 18.4 hectare property combined with 7044 and 7002 is comprised of 18.4 hectares. The subdivision plan for Phase 1 of this development was registered in June 2017. which is shown just below the colorization on the plan shown on the screen there. In continuing with the rest of the project, the applicant has proposed to amend the zoning on both properties to small lot residential. The current zoning at 7044 Maple Park Terrace, the Spiritwood Estates Comprehensive Development Zone, was created in 2010 and presently permits a maximum of 448 residential units, including density bonuses as well as commercial space. The proposed zoning would include the following key changes: reducing of the overall density from 400 to 137 lots, as shown preliminarily on the drawing on the screen. Changing the permitted uses, removing the commercial and multifamily development part of the CD zone, with the exception of duplex on all lots over 600 square meters, which are permitted in the R3 zone. Increasing public parkland, playground, trail system to no less than 32% of the overall lot area. Register a Section 219 covenant on all the R3 lots to have a minimum size of 500 square meters with a maximum of 20 lots with a development with smaller lots. Excuse me, I got to go back for a sec. The park dedication as shown on the plan is to be no less than 32% and not be included with the dedication that was with Phase 1, which is an increase from the approximately 27% that was proposed under the original CD9 zone. The park will be dedicated in phases, and the phases are depicted on the plan if you can see them on the screen there. In addition, the applicant has proposed to construct a public nature trail through the development which will link the neighborhood with Furwood Park. A minimum of 2 trailheads will be provided with doggy stations as per the trail parks and master plan, along with parking, etc. In addition, the applicant proposes to develop a neighborhood playground complete with CSA-approved playground equipment valued at almost $100,000 with a minimum of 10 visitor parking spaces as well. The existing CD zone contains a number of conditions relating to the provisions of amenities and affordable housing. The previous owner, in advance of completion of the first phase of the development of the lands, completed construction of the Winfield Road, curb and gutter, sidewalk, streetlights, amenity, as well as construction of the sanitary sewer infrastructure to service the development. Amenity contributions under the CD9 zones would be triggered if densities increased over the base density amounts. The R3 zone the R3 zone proposed will remove all these potential itemized contributions. CRD Water has evaluated, and they need upgrading of their transmission line to service the Mountain Heights area generally, and contribution to the DCC program as well. Extensive engineering studies have been completed on the project, including but not limited to wastewater, domestic water, fire flow, road networks, and lot grading. Additional reports on traffic and the environment requirements have also been completed over the past year, and this project has been planned for both the previous and current ownership. As I said earlier in the report, this property at 7002 Brailsford Place must be included in the sewer specified area, but that'll come as a different agenda item at a different time. The rezoning process provides the district with an opportunity to implement policies aimed at improve affordable housing with the district. The applicant has offered to provide a cash contribution of $1,000 per lot as each phase is registered to the district's Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. This creates a provision of $137,000 approximately. Staff are currently working to reconcile the fund, which contains affordable housing contributions, for which the value be provided in the future reports. A little out of time there, sorry about that. The traffic impact study was prepared, and it didn't assess that any further requirements for road networks was needed. Any upgrading. The north-south roads are proposed to be constructed through the site, and it can be accessed from Maple Park Terrace via Furwood and Rudd Road. The report concluded that there was no upgrading of the roads would be required due to the development, and recommended that internal roads conform to the district road standards. The removal of covenant FB 389615 will be required from the original rezoning in 2010. The covenant limited the development to 83 trips per day, as the traffic impact assessment specified that based on the original CD9 zone, contemplated improvements, and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure was part and party to that study. The new study that's been provided does not offer consequence of the traffic impact being at that level. So we're prepared to release the covenant to allow the development, and so is the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. That's all I have for this report. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And the applicant is here to field questions as well, if needed.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Howitt. Any comments or questions from council? Councillor Loggins?
This looks great. I think it will be a really nice addition to the community, and having the larger lots fits better with the area as well. I know that was a concern of some of the neighbors before. One of the suggestions I have for the play area, since it is close to Broomhill Park, is that the structures within the playground area are a bit more diverse, and some of the things that the community has been asking for quite a while is a lacrosse box and a covered basketball court. So just throwing that out there. Definitely the lacrosse box if possible. I'm not sure what the land area is like there and if that's even possible, but it's something to look into.
Thank you, Councillor Loggins. A couple of questions that I have. I mean, when you compare the two zones, they're a bit difficult to compare with each other because of the complexities with the CD zone. I like that the commercial component has been removed, because I think when you start to build commercial outside of the core, it takes away from enhancing and improving the town centre as it is. So I think that's a positive. We have also heard a bit about the density. So in some ways then, I'm reading in the report that most of the lots except for the 20 must be 500 meters square and larger. So how is that guaranteed? Because the zone otherwise would allow for all the lots to be 350 square meters. So how is 500 guaranteed to the district?
Your Worship, the guarantee would be through a Section 219 covenant.
Okay, so that protects the district. Okay.
Correct.
The other part was the nature trails, where there would be a maximum grade of 12%. From an accessibility perspective, that would be a bit steep for some, for anyone even to ride a bike or pushing a stroller or any sort of accessibility issue. That is a bit of a steep grade. So I'll just put a suggestion forward that some form of an accessible option be made available through that trail system, and that will just improve the usage there. My only challenge is with what is proposed are we encouraging the right supply of housing? So we're hearing that we have a major housing crunch, that folks cannot afford to buy in our community, and so if you have a 500 meter square brand new house with a suite in it, in Sun River, a house 10 years old that meets that dimensions now would sell for $700,000 and up, which would not make it attainable for a first-time home buyer, family, or anyone without a major amount of equity. So I'm just, maybe the applicant can answer what sort of market analysis has been done, because this is not encouraging affordable housing. I appreciate that. So that's, I agree. I like the larger density. I like that the commercial's been removed. I like the increase in the park dedication, the increase from 27 to 32. Those are all good things. But when we're hearing the push, last year there was people saying that even people working in the trades don't have a place to live. We need more affordable housing, and that there's been a push. I don't know that this supply that we're approving would actually provide attainable, affordable housing. In hearing the contribution, it has been increased from 500 to 1,000 into the affordable housing pot, which would be about 137,000, I understand. the previous zone had either 23 units to be built out through phases, 23 affordable housing units which are defined, but also it was a value of $345,000, so more than double the amount going into that pot. But yes, I understand that there are some complexities perhaps in achieving that with the CD zone. So I think those are more questions for the applicant to answer than for staff. So I'd like to just understand more about what market research, what analysis you've done. Who are you attracting and who is this project geared to? When I hear that there's a playground with a slide and those sorts of equipment, to me that's gearing to families because that's the amenity that seems to be your design. But I don't know that what you're producing would be affordable to families, and slides are typically for families with young children, right? Not so much those in the teens. So just curious what your market demographic and what you're trying to reach. So that'll be applicant questions. Well, that's all I have for now. I'll go to other councillors. Councillor Parkinson and then Berger, please.
Through you, Your Worship, to staff. Are secondary suites allowed in all of these homes in this zoning?
Your Worship, secondary suites would be allowed in everything that's 500 square meters and greater.
And so we're thinking that the secondary suites would be considered the affordable housing aspect of it. I understand here listening to council members whose children have to buy in Langford because they can't afford to buy here. Also with staff members that can't afford to buy here. I would like to think that for a development of this size that there would be more of an affordable housing aspect for the people who live here.
Just a correction, though. I thought suites were permitted in every zone of every lot, so that would also include the 350, or is there something different for this particular zone?
No, my apologies. It would be included in all the lots.
Okay.
In this development. My apologies.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Okay, Councillor Berger, please.
Yes, thank you. I just have a question through you to staff. It's with regards to Ms. Irwin's email. She states here through the previous, because this has changed hands now and it's new with a new owner. Through the previous development, there was an easement or something that she believed was granted on her property. It's in the first paragraph there of our yellow page. Just looking for some clarification whether this easement does exist or doesn't. I think that she is saying that it doesn't exist, but previously did, and just wanted to know either way.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, I'm not familiar with the issue of an easement on their particular property. There was an issue, I believe, at one time of access to the park that's down below, but that park has its own access, so I'm not familiar with the issue. Perhaps the applicant, when he comes up to address other questions, he could answer that as well.
Okay, and sorry, that was follow-up to my next question. There is access to that park closer to Furwood?
Yeah, there's direct access right off Furwood.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is, one of the changes is the change to where sewer and water will be run. Previously it was through Winfield. Through you to staff again, where will sewer and water be going to that property now?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, sewers would be, if I go back to the
It's not on a different screen.
Okay. Your Worship, the sewer and water, I can't speak for the water right at the moment, but sewer comes up Winfield Drive and services all that area. Sewer or water, I believe, comes through Brailsford.
So I'm sorry, the sewer will still
It comes up through the first phase up through Winfield, and then will continue up through the development phase by phase.
Okay, sorry, I thought I noticed in your opening speech that it was changed and it will no longer be going. Sorry, you said Maple Park Terrace will no longer be going. Sorry.
Yep.
And now through Winfield. Thank you. My last comment is just to touch on the commercial side of it. I was actually disappointed that the commercial node was being removed. I think it's really important when we have larger developments to have small commercial nodes. I mean, obviously it's your development and nobody can really tell you what to do, but I like the idea of small, sort of corner stores within newly created subdivisions. And affordable housing, as follow-up to my fellow councillors' comments, I think what we need to do at this table is look at our affordable housing policy. The applicant has agreed to pay more than what was suggested, but when we look at our affordable housing policy, I think we need to sort of bring that back to the table and look at how we can better remedy that, so then when we're asking for things with regards to affordability, we've got, better policy in place. I think it's time to revamp that one. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Loggins, then Pearson, then Parkinson.
I just wanted to follow up on what Councillor Berger suggested about the commercial removal. I agree. I'm not ecstatic about it either, but it doesn't necessarily bother me. But I think that is one of the things that we need to consider, because I believe it's part of our new OCP, is it not, with the commercial nodes, and to have small nodes within different regions so that it's not competing with the core, but instead just providing little outlets, and walkability for people in the neighborhood.
Councillor Pearson, then Parkinson.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair to Director of Development Services, did we iron out the Brailsford access? Because I see it's feeding from Stone Heights, Brailsford, and Winfield. Because we were talking about having bollards in there somewhere along the way. Are we going to have that access down Brailsford?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, your name tags are incorrect. There'll be no access at this point in time to Brailsford. It would be bollarded off. The traffic report identifies that it's not required. At this point in time, we've been in discussions very preliminarily with the applicant with regards to bollards and some sort of upgrading at the end of Brailsford to make it a little more pedestrian friendly in that area.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, just when I look at the configuration, and I can appreciate now that it's reduced in size, it seems to me that we're feeding a lot of lots to up and down, and Brailsford. There's sort of, it looks to me that there's a natural opportunity, and when Brailsford was designed, and if I look at the original road configuration, and I see roads going to a dead end on a piece of property, it always indicates to me that we're talking about the lands beyond. That's my notion from when I see a development like that. Normally, developers would cut that last lot off and end that back somewhere. When it goes up against the property line like that, it would indicate to me that it was intended to go for roads beyond. So I'm still struggling with that Brailsford not being used as one of the accesses. So that's my thoughts.
Councillor Parkinson, then Berger.
Through your worship, in the package we just received for new business, there's an email from a resident concerned with the lack of connectivity from the existing park, the lost opportunity for continued park wildlife corridor. I was wondering if that is being looked at.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Parkinson, I did respond to this email, and I said that at this point in time the layout was preliminary, and as we go through the rigors of subdivision activity, there could be a potential for realigning so there is continuity for those parks. It's a discussion that's yet to be had.
Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank Councillor Pearson for bringing up Brailsford. I remember we talked about it last time, and I too support that would go through. In the study by Wyatt Consulting Group on site site access 2.5, it says the east site access will be extension of Brailsford via Beaton Road to Otter Point. Has that been removed now because the number of houses have been decreased? And if so, I don't know how the rest of my colleagues feel, but I think it's very important to have Brailsford connect through. I think the more accesses we can have for any development that has over 100 homes would be better for everybody involved.
Excuse me, Your Worship. We can reevaluate that. What happened is when they reevaluated the traffic analysis, Brailsford wasn't considered a necessary at this point in time. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen sometime in the future, but it's certainly something that we can revisit at this point if it's Council's wishes to do so.
Thank you. I would like us to revisit it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That makes sense because I'm looking at the diagram on page 18. Like that is what is proposed, right? And then you see the proposed road would just sort of flow right through. So it would just be odd that you would want to exit there and then you would hit a dead end and you just park and then I think people would find a way to get around it, perhaps. But it's right there. It's a straight line. There is the case that if there was some sort of an incident, a collision of some sort, then the whole community is cut off. So it just seems that cul-de-sacs just sort of, in terms of traffic flow, they're just dead-end roads. This one's completely in alignment, I would agree. So what would be the process to ensure that connection happens? I'm hearing the sense that council wants that road to go through.
Your Worship, at this point, it was identified that it didn't need to go through with a traffic analysis, but if council wishes to maintain the integrity of that connection, we can certainly put that as part of the rezoning and certainly as part of future subdivision as we go through. I'd just like to point out that the conceptual plan that you see on the screen is just that, a conceptual plan. There may be even the opportunity to connect Mountain View Heights as well sometime in the future. I haven't ruled that out either, but as I said, this plan is very preliminary at this point in time.
Yep, thank you. No, I think that would make sense. Councillor Casper.
Yeah, through you to staff. Under the current zoning, which is the CD zone, under section 809.2, permitted uses, the property currently allows gravel extraction and processing for on-site development and on-site and off-site municipal services, etc. The sale of excess gravel extracted, process on-site is permitted for off-sale use for a period not to exceed the duration of construction. So is that permitted use no longer going to be allowed on as a result of this rezoning?
As soon as, Your Worship, through to Councillor Casper, as soon as the rezoning is adopted, then it would revert to the residential zone, and the CD zone would no longer be in effect. So, yes, they would not be able to have the gravel extraction.
So, but they would be allowed to modify the site and process for their own activities.
I believe the zone will still allow for the activity for their own purposes, but not to be taken off-site.
Right, and if I just as a friendly reminder that this permitted use, when council actually created this, it was for the purpose of allowing the sale of excess, and our zoning bylaw wouldn't permit that, so it was viewed as a temporary measure. So, okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments from members of council? Okay, so then we'll proceed into the public hearing portion of this report. And before we do that, there is a statement that I need to read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available, and they're on these yellow pages. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this hearing forms part of tonight's regular meeting of council and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the public hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So at that time, if anyone would like to come forward, including the applicant, to speak on tonight's public hearing, bylaw number 694, zoning amendment bylaw 600-53, 2018.
Marlene Arden, 5131 Sooke Road. Okay. Better? And let go. Thank you. Okay. My partner Dale Wilson and I own 7059 Maple Park Terrace. And we were here, I'm going to say, 5 or 6 years ago, and supporting the development that was going through at that time. And we were given comfort and assurance that the sewers were going to be going down Maple Park Terrace. At this point, the developer has worked with, I'm going to say, I think 4 of the residents to assist them with the sewer hookups in lieu of them getting either easements registered or fill placed on their lands that would help them out. I would think that there's probably about 4 lots that have not been dealt with that were in the original extension, and I think that the developer should be standing behind what they agreed upon, even though it's a different developer. He did buy the concept. And I think that even if it's, and I don't know how much it would cost, $400,000 to get those last 4 lots on each side of the road done, the lots that they are proposing will be selling at $225,000 a lot anyways, and I think that they could probably absorb that. The portion that they bought on Brailsford was purchased after the agreement of extending those sewer lines, and so now they've taken away from the Maple Park Terrace area to, of course, put it on something that they see of value. Most of these lots on Maple Park Terrace are about half an acre in size, and the people there have held on to them for many years in hopes that they could develop them themselves, whether it's just into 2 or 3 pieces. And the district, the council has a great opportunity here to be able to approve those as they come up and maybe even put covenants on them for the size of houses that go on those developments. We talk continuously about affordable housing, and there are opportunities to be able to limit the size of house and size of land. With the development that they're proposing, those are larger pieces of lands which have larger houses, which will be larger price tagged. They're selling the duplexes for around $600 right now, houses $700, and they're going up to $800 at the top of Mountain Heights. It's not affordable. Another option would be to say, yes, you can have 75% of that zoning, but we want pockets of smaller zonings within that. So I just think it's a great opportunity to really have a good look at it and do some affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arden. It was Ms. Arden, correct? Yeah. Okay. Other speakers this evening, please? If you could please come forward, sir. We just need your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name's Sean Pell. I live at 692 Leaview Lane in Colwood, and I own property at 7063 Maple Park Terrace. And as was so just well spoken by Marlene there, several years ago, 5 or 6, sitting in on a meeting just like this, at the time, there was assurances that sewer hookups were going to run essentially the length of Maple Park Terrace. And as plans change, people try to get out of some of their earlier agreements and responsibilities or shift them to other locations. And I'm here to voice my concerns about trying to avoid previous commitments to residents of that area. And everybody who lives next to a large development has to put up with a lot of noise. The idea of NIMBYism is a difficult thing for developers. I have nothing against this development. It has changed over time. I do like seeing the large amount of park dedication, but trying to avoid previous agreements and shifting things from one location to another is something I'm here to hopefully stop and have those commitments met in a timely fashion. It has been years of waiting, dealing with dust, rock, noise, and at some point, and at the original agreement, it was something like at phase 4 of this massive development that a sewer line would be put down Maple Park to service those large lots. And I'm just here to ask council to hold this developer to that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Good evening. My name is Chris Bryant. I live at 2404 Mountain Heights. I'd like to acknowledge the inevitable constant of change in a development like this in our community. That's without, discussion. We can't do anything about that. But what we can do is make these changes wisely. I think what we're looking at is certainly a development that has been given some thought for the property it's on, but perhaps not so much for the properties that it affects. I think you've heard two people say that just before me. I'd like you to give strong consideration to the consequences of putting an increasingly dense development in behind the curtain of existing properties. And in particular, how traffic flow, given the nature of these dwellings, will go downstream to the major connectors. I think in traditional urban land economics and development, you put high-density structures away from your larger properties. You'd put them down at the intersections of major transit routes as a way to not have that high traffic flowing through residential areas. You can argue that this is residential traffic flowing through residential areas, but I think when you take a look at the nature of these properties that are going to be developed here, within the package provided, it talks about there are going to be single-family units, duplexes, all or some suited. So I think the challenge that we have to face every day at 8:20 to 8:45 and again at 3 o'clock, and as a business owner in this town, I know there are many people who say to me, can I please not make an appointment at your office during these times of the day when I know that traffic is going to be terrible? I think you have to look at the impact of cars and how many cars are going to be developed, are going to be involved in these properties. Are you going to be allowing cars to be parked on front lawns like I see in some developments? Are you going to be putting, well, these may have sidewalks, but are the neighborhoods that they're connecting to going to have sidewalks? Or are you simply asking kids to step off a sidewalk and then to step onto a road like Foreman Heights, which is not to code, which is at a grade that presents great danger to kids standing at a makeshift bus stop at the bottom? So I think you really have to push hard to think beyond this development and how it's going to affect the quality of lives in the neighborhoods joining up against it. And as such, I'd ask you to revisit your traffic study and include Mountain Heights to Foreman Heights as one of the intersections that has to be taken a look at, and that also takes into consideration the development up Burr Road as well, because that area is going to be just bombed. I travel to work every day by car. Some days I ride my bike, but without fail, I see kids standing at traffic stops having to dodge construction vehicles turning tight corners and whatnot. So please make that effort to improve sidewalk access and road quality in the neighboring properties as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Other speakers this evening?
Hello, my name is Marcel Wijnands, and I live on 7058 Maple Park Terrace, and we own the place. And I just wanted to state that I have the same concerns about being hooked up to the sewer as my two neighbors previously said. And one other concern I have is the incredible change in landscape that's going to happen. Like we all know, it's built on a slope. And for instance, we have a pretty massive 350-year-old Douglas fir in our yard. I mean, what's going to happen with that if the whole slope behind it is going to be blasted? And that's going to affect the water flow to that tree and to everything else in my garden. So that's another concern that I have. I mean, if I look at what they've done so far, they completely changed the landscape. There's been so much blasting over the last couple of years. I mean, that has to have an effect on the natural water flow. So that's going to affect, everything that grows on our property. And that's the two major concerns I have about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. My name's Don Colgrave. I live at 2239 Pyrite Drive, Sooke, BC. I'm here to speak on behalf of Don Smith. He owns a piece of property at 7062 Maple Park Terrace. And I'm also here to speak on behalf of the resident of Pyrite Drive and adjacent to Beaton. There's no need to belabor a point, but the two speakers, Marlene Arden and the other fellow whose name I've since forgotten, we too are disappointed that the sewer won't be completed down Maple Park Terrace, as it represented an opportunity for the development of the half-acre lots there to be increase the density, and in particular, perhaps provide some affordable housing that is of greater density than a duplex. So that's all I'll say about that. I'm concerned with the extension of Brailsford down Beaton Avenue because the early report of the staff member indicated that no upgrades were needed and Beaton Avenue will become the thoroughfare, and that's a pinch point now in the morning with the parking and pedestrian traffic. It's already a dangerous road, and with no upgrade it would even be more acute. And I have concerns about that because just as a driver, and I think fairly competent driver, I've faced many near misses on that particular stretch of road just from Pyrite to Otter Point Road, and I think a significant increase in traffic, as will be realized by that development, is going to pose a real threat to the safety of the citizens of Sooke. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colgrave, as well as the others that you're speaking on behalf of tonight. Do I have other speakers? Okay.
Ellen Lewers, 5526 Sooke Road. I too have concerns, as has been already spoken about, with changing the landscape. We see what's happened with landslides and waterslides and things happening all over the world because of improper development, and actually very close to us. We need to be more cognizant of what we're doing when we're blasting rock and blasting into rivers and creeks, underground rivers and creeks, which are feeding different habitats which are necessary. Also, the parking issues. I don't know why we need to change how we develop. We need to have back alleys and for cars to drive into and park in the back, because what's happening, as you see all over, is people are driving down the street, parking on the sidewalks, parking on the grass, as was said, parking all over the place, and you can't get a vehicle down, let alone a fire truck. I've been down. There's one development on just off Otter Point. No, Grant Road, and like this type of development. And I had to back out. because there's no way you could turn around. There's no place to turn around. There's no every Visitor parking is full all the time. There's 12 parking spots, and they're full all the time. By allowing suites in every zone, does it make affordable living? I don't see that it does. I think it just increases the debt to people because they still have to buy houses at $600,000, and it means that more people have to work, so more people and more cars, so everybody's working. So you don't just have 2 cars, you don't have 3 cars, you have 4 or 6 cars. There's no place for them to park because people are there as suites. And when you do your traffic study, where the traffic's going to go, as was said, the traffic all comes down and it all ends up on Sooke Road. And I never hear any of the traffic studies saying what kind of increase goes on to Sooke Road. And that's big. I mean, we see what happens when there's an accident. It's huge. And until that's addressed, I think that we need to talk to the province about addressing the road. To keep putting on more traffic onto that Sooke Road. As you know, I live on it and see constantly what's happening on, as Dr. Bryan, with his business. You see what's happening. It can't go on. And there was a point made there about Grant Road at Otter Point. Well, that's a dangerous place. It doesn't matter if you're turning left or right. It's a dangerous place to come out of. And if you're going to put more traffic that might come out that way, it's an accident waiting to happen. I mean, we've all done that, trying to come out of there. It's ridiculous. And with putting in parks and playgrounds, we inherit those after they're developed, correct? So are there proper development costs attached to that, so that we, when it comes time to replace, as what happened at the playground and the one we just did, right? So we had to pay for that. That comes out of our tax dollars. So we have to be careful what we put in there. Parks, how much more money is it going to cost us to maintain those parks? Parks are a wonderful thing. They can be. But what's the cost of maintaining them, and what are we going to have them used as? Are we going to have them used as green space or for wildlife? So those are some concerns I have, and I mean, $225,000 a lot for a 350 square foot lot. Pretty pathetic. And then you put a house on it. That's not affordable. And for the payments for bank payments and to rent out your suite, you can't rent out a suite under $1,500 to help make the payments for those homes. So I don't see that as affordable living, I'm afraid. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewers. Other speakers this evening? Can you turn on the microphone, please?
Sorry. Michael Volk from 4923 Townsend Drive in Saanich, and I am the applicant representing the owners. And we're still friends. So I guess I'll start with the affordable housing component. My day job is as a real estate agent. I've been licensed for about 30 years now. Wow, time flies. I started in residential, eventually graduated to commercial, and I specialized always in putting together subdivisions, and so this was a natural evolution for me. But I am considered an expert in housing and cost of housing, especially new housing. I've built several hundred homes. And it's my experience that the most, and I always put my new young family clients into new homes, always. Why? Because it's the most affordable way to go. There's a few moves you can make when you build a new house on how you can create a down payment with the equity that's created at the end of the day with the house. It used to be easy 20 years ago. So you could get in for almost no money down. You can still do that if you're creative and you've got family to back you. So what happens is these single-family homes on your 500-meter lots with suites end up being the most affordable. They're the easiest, they're the best situation for a family. You have a backyard for the kids, and the suite offsets a great amount of the rent, and it's the best way to go. So, yes, you can buy a condo or a townhouse maybe that's in the core, but you don't have the rent from it, and it's not cheaper on a monthly basis, in my experience, and most of the agents I know. As far as putting affordable housing on this particular site, I will be coming to council with a proposal. I talked to Rob and Nikki the other day about down below. However, it is owned by the same group. It's the part the council, and I'll go into it very briefly. It's the part the council hates at the end, that long, skinny part. We're going to do fee simple lots at the bottom because my client and the neighbor can split the road and have a public road. At the top, we're going to rezone it to something like an RM2 with a 3-story maximum and do some truly affordable housing. We're talking about doing not even garage parking, but covered parking. And anyways, it's about 1.5 acres, and that's something we're looking at. But guess what? The reason we're doing that there is because it works. It's fairly flat, and it's easy to build on, and it's kind of a odd little spot. So as far as building affordable housing up on the hill, these lots are costing over $100,000 each to service. So affordable housing, it isn't. They're very expensive to build on with the blasting and all of the other things we have to do these days. And when you add up development cost charges and everything that you have to pay, you're up into the mid-hundreds before you even start to sell the lot. So and then you have to buy the land, pay the taxes, all that. As far as affordable housing goes, though, we are contributing $1,000 per lot, and that was volunteered by the developer, as opposed to $500 because we wanted to give something that was a good number, recognizing the fact that these are more expensive homes. We thought that was prudent. I'm just going through my notes here, whatever we talked about. As far as we don't have any excess gravel requirements, so we won't be taking anything off site. Because of the fact that we're twinning the water main and bringing it across for CRD water, that fill that we'll have to do will eat up all of the rock that we have. So we don't have to be selling or doing any of that stuff that JP was recently doing. As far as Maple Park Terrace and blasting behind there's no blasting. You can see on the plan that there's proposed park back there, so we won't be blasting on that bank. And traffic study and all of that. I agree with you guys about Brailsford. It's amazing how far I went down through this project before I ever heard anything about bollards on Brailsford. I always thought it went through too. So I agree on that. Somebody was concerned about landslides and things like that. Obviously, if we're building on rock, there's no chance of, when we're doing any construction, because we're simply working with rock, there's no chance of landslides. It's better for earthquakes. As far as maintenance on the park equipment, we offered a 5-year maintenance bond for the park trails and the park equipment. So, and that was volunteered by the developer. We recognize the fact that the city doesn't like getting into these parks. However, I think this one will be very affordable to maintain because it's all natural, or almost all of it except for the playground. And that does have a lifetime warranty on that equipment. And you know how lifetime warranties go. It's like, sure, in 20 years they won't exist. But anyways, it is warranted. And we offered 5 years on top of that at our expense. And someone said about lots being $225,000 for 350 meters. I don't see, first of all, I've recently done a layout where I tried to incorporate those 350 meter lots, and I didn't even get 20, I got 18. And they weren't 225,000. I was looking at 199s and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to ask that kind of money for a 225 meter lot. I need some water. And did I say sorry I was late? I left the thumb drive in my computer at home. I was halfway registered. Wasn't a fun recollection. a lot of the neighbors were talking about the sewers on Maple Park Terrace. I thought that would come up. Obviously, we were not the developers that had anything to do with the CD9 zone, and we read through all of that and looked at that as an amenity. We've now, with this application, cut our unit count from approximately 480 units to 140 lots, or whatever, 150, call it 150 lots. No matter which way you look at it, it's a significant reduction in units, and we've significantly increased our park dedication from about 27% to about 32%. So we recognize the fact that that Maple Park needed to, the neighbors wanted to have their sewers done. So we did all we could with the gravity system that we had, and we actually put 4 people on sewer, I believe, 2 duplexes, or 1 duplex and 2 single-family homes. So 4 titles. And those were the only ones, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the only ones that the gravity worked. The rest of them would have had to pump, which requires a pressure system. So I'm working with the lady that lives in Alberta, and she has a house at 7052. I think Rob knows what I mean. 7052 Maple Park. She was calling me, asking if I would help her. And so I hooked up with Jared from Westbrook Consulting, and we're going to try and help her figure out a pressure system. And what I said to, basically I'll say to everybody, is that if you guys want to hook up into the pressure system, let's just do that. It won't cost very much, and it could be done all.
Okay, you need to direct your comments to me, actually.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm not very, sorry, Mark. Miss, yeah, sorry. So I'm happy to help the neighbors do that. And I mean, they all have to get into the SSA. And then the one lady was saying to me that, you know, she'd like to do this. And I said, you know, it costs like $40,000. And she said, well, that's okay. She said she wants to get it done, and she wants her house on sewer. And so I said, okay. And so she's applied to get into the SSA now. And so I think that if the neighborhood wants to be hooked up, I don't know where exactly it was, what it was cut off at before, but if that group wants to get together and do that, then we'll help with costs. I'm fine. Cover the engineering or something like that. I don't know. But I definitely would be willing to help with that. And the way it went before, the reason I'm not just jumping to volunteer to do it, is because it came up behind, can I point on the map? I'm sorry.
Is there maybe if staff can, because if you point at either of those screens, we won't know what you're pointing at.
Anyways, but the way it used to go is it used to come up behind, so only a couple houses could have been serviced off of Maple Park. Am I wrong? It did come up behind, didn't it? Oh, sorry, I'm not on side here. Okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't allowed to. I'm terrible with the procedure.
Okay.
So anyways, I'm happy to help out. We couldn't sewer them all from Maple Park anyways. It can't be done without doing a pressure system. The way it was going to be done before by gravity came along behind, and we've already built that phase of the subdivision.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Do you have any more to present?
No, I'm done. I'm done with that. Thanks. So I'm happy to answer questions. I did have a couple photos that if you guys wanted to see them, and there's also a little short, a little flyby that shows what the subdivision looks like. It's a rendering.
Okay, why don't we look at that? Go ahead.
Hopefully it works. That's what I went to get when I was late. So that's the response to that neighbor's question. She was one of the neighbors sent an email.
Do we have a way of zooming in on that? Okay, that's the in this materials then. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Volk.
Oh, I was just going to say that I thought that this was going to come up. I just got this email before I left for the meeting tonight. This was replying to the 2 emails that the neighbors had given about concerns about, for instance, these people were concerned about us going through their right-of-way. That was an easement rather that was across their property. That actually, I don't know if you guys remember what happened, but it actually got accidentally accidentally released from land titles. Like, it apparently never happens, but it happened this time. So that's fine. We can go through the park, like Rob said earlier, to tie those trail connections together. And then she was worried about blasting beside her house, but the blasting we'll be doing is roughly 100 meters away from her house. So it's not going to be an issue. And then there was another neighbor that sent an email that was concerned about park continuity. And I just simply listed a few of the basic points that I've already said, whereas the way we've done this, there's a huge amount of park continuity and an area for the animals to to get from one area to the next. And if we took some of that away to put it somewhere else to connect another area, it doesn't really work. You'd end up, maybe another 5% of park, but at what point, 40% park. So, and by the way, and I did include a drawing, if you guys wanted to see it, from Stone Ridge that shows that was simply a stormwater management pond. That's why they made it a park. So, I don't think that it's necessary to have that continuity for such a small piece. Anyways, this was done by our engineer, and it's just a photo of overlooking phase 2 of the development. And that is the valley that will all be saved in its current state. That's it's not a very good rendering, I give you that. It's done by an engineer. That's the park and then the parking lot beside it. Somebody talked about a lacrosse box, and that ain't gonna happen here. There's not enough parking, and it's basically on the side of a hillside. So next time. And stormwater management ponds that will then tie into the park. And one of the reasons why, and it was me that volunteered the 5 years, and I just blurted it out at a meeting. I've been involved with these projects before, and you leave, and you drive by 2 years later, and you're looking over at your project because you're proud, and you go, oh my God, it looks like hell. And so we'll come and we'll get rid of the broom, and we'll do all the stuff that has to be done so it looks good, and hand it over properly in a well-maintained fashion. That's looking up over Clark's Place down towards the project. The views on the point there are spectacular. Huge topography issues. Anyways, that's a boring one. That's the lower phase we've already built. It's really slow. Yeah, that's not a very good movie. It's really smooth and nice on my Mac. It's only about 10 seconds long. So if council has any other questions, otherwise I'll... Good.
Okay, thank you for sharing those pictures. I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So, in terms of the maintenance agreement that's in place, so is that 5 years from when all the parks are completed, or as each section is done by phase, is it 5 years from when that particular phase is completed, or how does this 5 years work?
The way I see it working would be that it would be 5 years from the point in time at which the main park is finished up by phase 6, because then after that all there is phase 7, and there's nothing but bushes up on that side of it.
Okay.
So the important part would be the park, where there's going to be, there'll be everything that a park has, your doggy stations and your picnic tables and what have you.
Okay.
Playground equipment.
So the one thing with playground equipment that I've noticed is that it's subject to vandalism on a regular basis. So as items are vandalized, they're replaced then. That's different from the lifetime warranty that
Sure.
a product provides. So within that 5 years, as items are damaged, then they're just replaced.
Well, I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. I would expect there'd be insurance. I don't know how that stuff works, but I didn't know, like, we said, okay, $100,000. And because we started out at 70 and it was just junk. So I said, okay, bump it up. It was like 100, 110 grand. But if all of a sudden there's $100,000 of playground equipment gets wrecked, I would hope there's some insurance on it. I don't know how that works.
Well, there may be, but it would be subject to a deductible. But what we see even in Broom Hill Playground is that equipment is repeatedly tagged. People spray paint it and damage it and the like, and then our park staff are up there continually maintaining it. So it's just something to be mindful of, is that we get that, but things in this town are unfortunately vandalized. It's not I'm not trying to discourage you from putting it in, because they're needed amenities, but they do encounter that. In terms, I had some difficulty following your earlier comments on the affordable housing. If maybe you can just re-explain that formula of how you mentioned that your target is first-time home buyers, families with kids, and that they can get into this brand new home with no down payment. Like, how does that work?
Well, it's a little bit of sleight of hand, and it's something we did.
Sleight of hand?
20 years ago in the business, the way you do things is you could produce a down payment on the house. You'd get the down payment from your parent. It's just the way everybody did things back then. You get the down payment from your parents or a friend, and then you'd be behind on the trades until the house was finished. And then when you got it remortgaged, you'd basically get your down payment then. Because obviously, when you build a house, you build equity into it. And so what you do is use the equity at the end for the down payment at the beginning. You can't do that anymore because they've tightened up the banking regulations. But it's still the easiest, because the only way you can get in a house is if you put down a large chunk of money, and you have to make good money. And so that was when we used to do things, over the years. That's how it's always been done. And nowadays, it's still the best investment for people is generally new housing, because a house with a suite that you can build equity into is your best investment. And a townhouse or a condo in town that doesn't have a suite, sure, it might be $100,000 less, but if you factor in the $1,200 rent that you get from your suite in your house, or maybe it's $1,000, I don't know what it is this way exactly, but that equates to a lot more than $100,000 in value.
Okay, no, I can kind of hear what you're saying. It's just for me to repeat this publicly. And so I'm in a public setting, and someone asks, okay, you came in and approved this development, and how is the affordable housing addressed, and it's for young families? I would have to say, well, the developer, I don't like hearing sleight of hand and what occurred 20 years ago and this and that. Like that, I can't even fathom repeating that. So that's where it's just asking, like, what I'm seeing is people that need to get into housing require equity and a high amount of income, and usually that's your savings. So that's where this seems to me, it's appealing to more the second or third time homeowner who has built up equity and is now looking for something else, or coming from a different market perhaps, someplace like the Lower Mainland, and moving here because of, for whatever reason, housing affordability, the ability to telecommute and the like. So it's not that's where my question is this the right supply for our community? Is it putting Sooke residents into homes and people that want to transition out of rental into homes? Like, that's where I'm looking, like, are we building out and approving the right supply of housing? Because the demand is certainly there, but the demand is for people that are working or maybe downsizing, or students or first-time buyers. So when you hear that, yes, there is the ability for a suite. It's dependent upon, like, you're making your mortgage payment depending on somebody else. Mm-hmm. So that means that you need a quality renter, you need to attract a renter, and you are dependent on them to make your debt payment. And that's just sort of what has led to affordable issues. It's my...
Well, and it's always
I'm not an expert, it's just an opinion.
Well, I am, and I speak very casually about it because I've done it for so long. But I mean, the fact is you probably remember when you bought your first house, it was all about coming up with the down payment. And if you can borrow the down payment and pay it later, that's how a lot of people do it. And they've done it that way for years.
I see. So then my other part then is is the market in terms of market analysis and.
No, my market is to builders. Let's be clear. that's what we went through with the whole form of character thing. I mean, I'm ultimately selling these houses to builders who are then making a decision on what exactly they're going to market to their clients. We're not building the houses, we're simply selling lots.
Okay.
But having said that, we're selling single-family lots, and it is my experience, and if you ask any realtor in the business, single-family homes in this kind of price range are what everybody wants. That's what you want to. I mean, they've got a great view, so you get a better rent. You get a quality tenant in a new house. So that's what.
Okay. No, that's okay. That's good. Okay. Does council have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, and I just have through you to the applicant, and it's in regard to the covenant that currently resides with the current zoning, and that was the construction of the sewer system for Maple Park Terrace. And it was to be done prior to the completion of Phase 5 of the plan, as per the bylaw. So how does this development correlate with Phase 5?
Right
on that map, I think Phase 5 was up somewhere up here?
Yeah, you're right. Right around where we are right now.
Okay. So I just got to get it clear. So what you're proposing and what you've offered is really no different than what that covenant said?
No. I have. Well, I hate saying but we have not offered anything.
Right. But I just heard you tonight. I don't want to get into a debate.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Why don't I just say this? We will pay for. If I can do a pressure system with the houses remaining, we'll pay for, I don't know, what's a reasonable amount? Half? And then we can, might be, I heard it's around 40 grand. So if it's $20,000, fine.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know, in relation to the project that this zoning will allow,
Yep.
Is it equal to Phase 5, or is it equal?
It is.
Okay.
And thank you for asking the question.
Okay.
And I've been thinking as I've been sitting here, how can I make this work? Because just saying I'll pitch in for the engineering doesn't sound that great. So why don't I just say the developer will pay for half, whatever the costs are, to put those houses that would have been sewered before on a pressure line that would run down Maple Park. And, I think I was told by Jared it's probably around 40 or 50 grand. So it's 20 or 25,000. And is that a good, I can't do that?
Okay, so a question I have so that was that sewer line, and thank you for raising that, Councillor Casper, the Maple Park Terrace sewer services. This is what the previous zone says, complete with service to the property line of 7047 Maple Park Terrace to 7076 Maple Park Terrace. So is that the full length then of Maple Park Terrace?
I don't think so. I think it only goes to, I'm not sure.
Okay,
well,
so
Maple Park Terrace, I don't think it goes all the way to the corner.
No, it doesn't look so on the map. I tried Googling the addresses, but even Google wasn't finding all of them. It found 7047, but not 7076. But that was what was to be done under the previous zone. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're going to honor that agreement, but up to a maximum of half of the pressure system?
I have to be careful. Here's what we can do. We can't go in, everybody's house is different. So some people need a grinder tank in the back, some people need this, some people have a duplex, some people it's chaos to get up their driveway. They've got to get it to their property line, okay? And then we'll run down and I will put the pressure system in and I'll split the cost with the neighborhood for the pressure pump and for the line on the boulevard. But I won't go and run the lines down everybody's driveways. That would be their situation.
Okay, I think
and that would be I'm sorry.
I think in regards to that, and there was also another, I'm trying to look for the other, is something that council, I think it's reasonable that we would receive that in writing, and it was also the Brailsford road connection that you would support that road connected through, should the zoning come through, so that we have that all ironed out. But anyway. Other questions from members of council? Do you have anything further to add, Mr. Volk?
I just said I'm terrible at this, and I'm very sorry about my procedure and the way I'm not really very good at. I don't know properly how to address if it's your.
It's your worship, or
okay,
Madam
worship.
Mayor, Mayor Tate.
Okay.
Mayor works.
Mayor, okay, Mayor Tate, thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
And I just want to say this subdivision is, it's the only project I've ever built where when we paved the roads, everybody came out and thanked me. Because they could drive from here to there. They didn't have to go around. And, I knew this would come up. I didn't have a solution. I didn't know if it would be a big deal or not, but apparently it is. Marlene called earlier. And so if that is a way, and I think it's a reasonable way that we can make it work, then great. If I can work with Rob and we can run a pressure line and then maybe everybody wins. So, if the people have to take it to their property line and get that's their deal, then we'll split the cost 50-50 of running the pressure line down, or you know what, if it's 30 or 40 grand, who cares? We'll just pay for the whole thing.
Okay. That's your final comment, Mr. Volk? Because we're still the public hearing open, so residents are able to...
I'm just saying that we'll make sure that everybody's happy. We'll
Okay.
just get it done. And I'll work with staff to get there. I know you have to put it into writing, and so if it's, say, cap it at 40,000.
So procedurally, a question to our corporate officer is just with these added items, potentially then, would this require another public hearing to have things because the dynamics of it are changing slightly?
No, the only reason that we would require another public hearing is if there was a change to the density.
I see. Okay.
Because everybody's been notified of the issues. Anybody that's present here is now privy to that information, and it doesn't affect the density on the lot. So
Okay, so these are just items then that council could put forward within a recommendation, and then when it comes back, then that would be what we'd be looking to adopt.
correct.
Okay, understand. Mr. Howitt?
Thank you, Worship. I just have a question for clarification. I just want to make sure I'm not the only one that missed it. We're talking about the sewer connections, or the commitment for the sewer connection, as was the commitment in the CD9 zone for the lots to be hooked up.
Well, I thank you for asking that, because I'm not exactly hearing that word for word.
Okay, because in the CD zone, there was a range of addresses that were to be serviced.
Yes.
And I thought I heard that this commitment in writing would be committing to those addresses as described in the CD9 zone.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the piece that we need to clarify, if council so wills, because what I see here was construction of Maple Park Terrace sewer services, complete with services to the property line of 7047 Maple Park Terrace to 7076 Maple Park Terrace to be completed prior to. So that's word, but that is not exactly.
Well, it's because there was a gravity line that came around the back through an easement behind everybody's properties. And we've already built that hole. You can't go there now. So now I'm saying is the only way to, and we sewered everybody by gravity that we could off the front end. I wish I had a map. But we sewered everybody we could off the front end, which was the first four.
Okay.
And then it goes the other way, so you're stuck. So what happened was the next lady that showed up, Jared worked with her and said, hey, we could do a pressure line, we could do it like this, and then the rest of the neighborhood could hook up to that if they want. And I said, sure. So when Marlene called this morning, I said, if you work with us, we can do this. And then, obviously there's an expense, and they all thought they were going to get it paid for with the old application. So what I'm saying now is like literally spur of the moment, because I was just working on this today, is, I'm changing my tune. I'm just trying to make it so that it's not a huge deal for us to help them. So I said, we'll pay for half. Okay, maybe that's cheap. I don't know. We'll pay for the first 40,000. I don't know. That seems reasonable to me.
So the first 40,000 of every house between those addresses?
Of the pressure line that comes along to the property lines. The expensive part is the crossings. Crossing the street gets really expensive. And you have to blast in trenches and all that kind of stuff, and you have to have traffic control, and all of a sudden it turns into a nightmare.
Councillor Casper.
Well, I think those details could be worked out and could be subject to a 219 covenant, and because there's property owners that will have to, in fact, make an official application to be included in the sewer service area, and though there are costs associated with
That's
that.
right.
So when those monies are collected, they go into the district's coffers, and those dollars can be utilized to actually offset some of those costs. But I'm not going to speak to that now. It's not the proper place.
So my suggestion would be that we put $40,000 into it.
Okay, well, I think it seems that that could be resolved by covenants, should council so will that to occur. Okay?
Thank you. And like I said, it was last minute today that this came up when Marlene called, so I hadn't spent much time on it at all.
Okay.
I'm just trying to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Volt. Okay, do I have other speakers on this matter?
Hello, Jeff Bateman, 7083 Briarwood. Now, back in 2010, I wasn't paying much attention to what was going on in these council chambers, so I guess I'd be fascinated to know why the council of the day approved such a massive development on the south slope of Broom Hill, aka Sacred Mountain, an area with such huge topography issues, as Mr. Volk has just said. A good thing that it will be less dense than promised, 400 down to 137 units. I would agree very much with Ellen Lewers about the parking issues, why we don't see more lane parking with garages in the back. River's Edge is also in a similar situation. People are parking on the main street. It makes it very difficult to get by. And it's very interesting, these very two-dimensional plans that you're all looking at. I hope everyone does walkabouts of these neighborhoods prior to these kind of sessions. I'm sure you all do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman.
Hello. My name's Don Colgrave, speaking again. I'm just curious, as representing Don Smith and his property on Maple Park Terrace, my concern is we've developed to phase 4 of what was called the Spirit Wood development, and I think you adhered to that and the bylaws and the amendments and all that, and got it to phase 4. Commence phase 5 because that's around the corner, and now we're saying, okay, all of those commitments that we made to get to that phase 5, now we're going to walk away from the commitment to those people on Maple Park Terrace and do something entirely different. And I find that a little bit onerous, and I appreciate the offer to share the expense from the developer, but I'm disappointed in a process that says, well, we'll just abandon that and move on to a different proposal. And the other sense I'm getting is all of these drawings and the weight of the presentation is very, very conceptual and seems to have a lot of gray area and not much consistency. And I'm really, as a resident, I'm worried that what's happening now is you grant the rezoning to R3 on a concept, and that the end product doesn't look like this, other than we'll have a covenant that says the lots other than 20 must be restricted to 500 square meters. You haven't really got anything other than allowing a less density, which is fine, but it's all the concept, and I struggle with that going forward because up Winfield, those houses, those big duplexes and things like that, sell for, as the realtor suggested, 600 plus each side. So, and I don't agree with some of the. I am a mortgage broker by trade, and I don't agree with all of the comments about affordability for the development as presented. So, those are my concerns, and like I say, I am disappointed that at the commitments of Phase 5, you walk away from previous commitments made by council that the residents at the time supported so that the developer could get the permit initially. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colgrave.
Ellen Lewers, 5526 Sooke Road. Just a thought, just when I was going through this, of that was 2010 when this proposal was initially. Did we have suites in all zones at that time, in 2010?
I'm pretty sure we did. I think.
I'm not sure.
Pretty sure I'm.
Because that's relevant.
It was in that term. No, 2007. I remember it initially being
in
lots of only lots that were 500 square meters or larger, and then it was in my first term that it changed to all zones. I'm sure it was, but I don't know that was. I can't.
Well, okay.
I can't say for certain it was 2010.
Okay, because the question is, because if the density was 448 for residential units, then 448 residential units. Now you're saying 157 residential lots, but if those 157 residential lots, 75 of them were single family, or duplex, and 75 were duplex. Now you're looking at 150 units with suites and all. So now you're looking at almost the same density as what was proposed in 448. So I think that's relevant. That just occurred to me. Anyway, just for your information.
Thank you, Ms. Lewers. Do I have any other speakers in this public hearing?
I just wanted to say that as far as density goes, that math doesn't quite work. If you maxed out the site, we would probably, you maybe would be at 300 units if you counted suites and everything. It's still significantly less than 450. But as far as the overall site goes and the layout, we've been working on exercises where we try to change the site by 1 meter, and the result is 7,000 meters in rock gets created. The amount of planning that's gone into this is ridiculous. This subdivision's the reason why this whole thing has come up is because the last guy went bankrupt. And I think he might not have been the first. My group has put a lot of money into making sure that this is a well thought out project. The layout of the site is determined from the way that the rock and the valleys are, and the wildlife corridor and the creeks and streams that are down below. So it is something that the road network will not change. It's pretty much set in stone. And well, it is set in stone. And that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Volk. Do I have other speakers or any others on bylaw number 694? Call for a second time. Call for a third and final time. So seeing none, I will then close this public hearing, and this matter will revert back to council. So council, we've had quite a lengthy discussion ourselves, comments, and heard from residents and feedback from the developer. And so now it falls on us to look at how we wish to move forward on this. Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I'll move third reading. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
So third reading is on the table. Is there a seconder for third reading? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. So speaking to it, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I just think, to put a lot of these issues as far as the number of residential units on each lot, the current zoning for the single-family residential in the CD zone for all those lots that were 550 square meters or larger did allow I think they allowed a secondary suite. I think that was permitted. One secondary suite on lots 550 meters. So even with the previous zoning, there was permission to have secondary suites. Plus all the multi-family, all the townhouses, etc. So there still would have been a large amount of suites generated on that property, as what the potential is here. So if each property had a suite in it, then you could look at almost 300 residential facilities. So I think that the key issue here is the fact that in order for any new lots to come on stream to address the housing market, this is the only way that's going to happen, because it became painfully clear that that over the past, I guess going back to 2010, 8 years, we've seen two separate owners not really accomplish very much. And that really did nothing for the housing market or the supply lots. And one thing I think that even a mortgage broker or somebody in the real estate business could attest to, that the more lots that you create, potentially you keep the prices down. When there's a shortage of lots, the prices go up. And that's just the reality of the market. And Sooke is going to be faced with a lot of demands, not only now but in the future. One of the things that I see not being built in this community, which properties are already zoned to accommodate, and that's the four-story condominiums, which can be for purchase and or rental. And I think that's one of the the driving forces of what could be done, but there seems to be a lack of appetite in the development industry to actually do that in Sooke. I don't see it happening. The property's already there, zoned, and nothing's being done with it, and that's kind of a sad commentary. But perhaps it's addressing what the market demanded, and that's young families who truly can't afford to live in Saanich. It's becoming more abundantly clear that they're having a hard time affording to live in Langford if you want a single-family house. And even townhouses, I was told just today by one of the councillors in Langford that brand-new townhouses in southern Langford are asking prices are almost $700,000 a side. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I support this. It reduces traffic flow in the long run. I'm glad to hear a commitment of at least dealing with that sewer commitment on Maple Park Terrace, and I noted the addresses on there. The condition was between 744 and 7. Yeah. So anyway, there was a commitment. It was very specific. I don't think it included all the parcels. It only includes some. So I'm glad to hear that hopefully we can get that resolved through a 219 covenant or have it included. So that's why I'm supporting the application. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, then Berger, and then Loggins.
Through your worship, I have a number of concerns with this development project. I am concerned with the density of it. I am concerned with secondary suites, which we allow in all zones, which I am opposed to. In regards to parking issues in the subdivisions, we notice that in a majority of the subdivisions around town now, a good number of complaints are in regards to parking on the streets, blocking driveways. It is a very huge problem. I'm concerned about the higher costs, not only for the residents, but also for the districts. When we have more parkland, that puts a cost onto the district. When we get playgrounds, that puts costs onto the district. The change in the landscape is a concern for me, as are the roadways and the sidewalks and the safety issues. So I just wanted to state what my concerns were with this project.
Councillor Loggins, then Berger. Pardon me, Councillor Berger, then Loggins.
Thank you. I just have a few comments. So the first one, just for clarity, if I look back into the old CD zone, page 54 and page 53 of the blue paper, and I'm not sure if maybe this is through you to staff, The section that was read out previously, Section D at the very bottom, with respects to, excuse me, prior to the completion of Phase 5, that 7047 to 7076 have sewer completed to the property line and valued at $181,000. Because this was probably done some time ago, I'm sure that the price has now changed. But I guess I'm just looking again through you to staff. With your best estimate, where would we be? On page 53, it does lay out the phases. So I guess I'm just concerned at where we are. If the new owner has purchased this property and has been adhering to CD9 zone thus far, where are we?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, if you look at the original zoning, or excuse me, the phasing mapping that was associated with the CD9 zone, I can't remember specifically, but the phases had different uses, and the subdivision that has taken place to date, which would enclose Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, was not originally, or is not what was the CD's 9 zone. He just went single-family dwelling subdivision in that area right now. Okay. I'd have to go back into the bylaw just to see what those areas actually were creating. So Area A, for instance, was, you're going to have to bear with me.
Page 52 of the blue paper shows the
Area A, as described in the original CD zone, allowed apartment buildings, assisted living facilities, community care, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you go into the other area that was down there, which was Area B, allowed single-family residential, community care, home-based business, et cetera. So what they did is just under the zoning created lots that were allowable by the subdivision side and did the number of lots that you see out there today.
Okay.
So to compare Phase 5 now to Phase 5 to what it was in the CD, it's
non-existent.
It's non-existent for comparison.
Okay. So that still leaves me a bit perplexed then, as opposed to where things would be on Maple Park Terrace. So if the phasing doesn't match the verbiage in the booklet, then it's hard to say what would be of the responsibility of the developer.
May I just add to that? You were talking about the cost of the sewer, approximately from 10 years ago. If my memory serves me correctly, the line that was going to at that time, or was talked about at that time, to service those lots was gravity feed. This would have to be pressure, so the cost associated will be a little bit more over and above the 10-year time frame difference.
Okay, thank you. So I guess what I'm challenged with in giving this my support, when we look at a rezoning, our function at the table is to look at density and only density. It's not to look at where the roads are, where the houses are, what the houses are going to look like. All that form and character comes at subdivision and development permit. So what we're looking at is just density. Dealing with all the other things that I just said, those are all market driven, and as we've known and seen throughout our community in the last 10 years, we've had Heron View, who has since changed their CD zone as well because the market driven houses that they planned back in the day didn't work. So now they're changing, bits and pieces of their phasing to work with what's going on in the market today. The same has happened in Sun River, Steeplechase, Churchill Meadows, Aranan, Stone Ridge. Now we're having the Sooke Basin Condo Project coming on, as well as McCall Housing. That happened, Hope Center. So we have a wide variety of housing within our community that's all market driven. So all of that, I have no problem leaving that in the hands of the developer to deal with what's going to be market driven, because if they can't sell it, they can't sell it. They won't build what they can't sell. And that's why we've seen lots of changes come forward throughout previous subdivisions that are on the books. But if we get right back just to the zone, I do support the density on this zone, as it is a down zone from what previously existed. The only sticky part that I'm unsure of is just the verbiage of changing and where we're at. I am a bit concerned with the prior commitment that was there. If we weren't anywhere close and if it was totally separate, I would say this is a new developer, new plan. I'm sorry that things have changed. But if he was still operating under the CD9 zone, for me, it's gray area, so I guess I look to my other colleagues at the table to see what you think.
Councillor Loggins?
Thank you. I have a few comments and then concerns about this development. First, I do, let's not kid ourselves, we don't have a wide variety of homes in Sooke. We don't. But at the same time, this is a difficult and expensive topography, so I understand why the lots are the way they are for this location. But we can't get, and we won't get developers to create affordable housing without proper policy and without providing proper incentives. So sitting here and telling developers to create affordable housing is not realistic. We have to actually act on our end before we can force that upon anyone else. The biggest issue for me in this situation is the sewer, because that's coming up quite a lot, and I know that there are concerns around the table. So I would prefer that we postpone third reading until we receive in writing from the developer the intent for their exactly what the sewer connection is, and then that way we know what we're voting on in terms of how it affects those residents.
Councillor Pearson, you're the seconder, so I could have gone to you earlier. Sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. And I think that for me personally, there's a couple of key points in here is that this is a big development, a big CD zone, and we all know that I'm not a fan of CD zones, that are passed somewhere back in history, and we've seen it change hands 2 or 3 times. We've had complaints about moonscapes, no activity, no access, road access changes, blasting rocks, covering people's houses with dust, all of these things that go on in this one development. And finally, we've got a developer that has the wherewithal to actually go into this development and complete it. Has kept us informed at every step of the way. Market does drive a lot of what goes on in decision making for any developer. Tying affordable housing is a way broader discussion in our community because we're not proactive in, as my councillor to my right, Councillor Logan said, we're not proactive in approaching affordable housing. Collecting $1,000 for each lot, great incentive, and I appreciate the developer doing that. It's not enough for affordable housing. But creating a mix of houses with suites in them is a portion of the solution. It's not the be all and end all for solution. I'm not sure that we should have suites in all zones. I've never been convinced of that either. But this development is now reducing density. It seems to be where our development has been focused across the hillside, from starting at Aranan, coming right over to Stone Ridge on this side, and it's inevitable that will be filled in. So for us to sit here now is the best thing for me, in my opinion, is to move forward with the development, honor the best way we can. I heard some commitment from the developer tonight to some people that were entering into an agreement. So I like that discussion. The development itself being reduced density, probably the right thing, probably what's going to help. Like I said, I'm not 100% happy with an 11-year process or whatever that this development's been going on. As a side note, the property that we're talking about that now has a Brailsford address being mixed into this was also a Winfield address a little while ago, been in the sewer specified area, came back to be taken out of the sewer specified area by the owners. So there's been changes that have been going on and on and on with this development. Finally, we're going to put a conclusion to this. Lots of concerns out there from the neighboring properties. What I would like to see is us update our DCC roads. Beaton Road, we heard about that tonight from a speaker. Beaton Road is getting beaten down by it's a road that should be a DCC road and it should be upgraded. So the more accesses that we have to all of these, to this lands beyond, the better off for traffic flow. We're still coming to Otter Point Road that needs to be upgraded, and we're still going to Sooke Road, which Ellen Lewers is talking about. We're funneling a lot of development, and you're hearing the prices in Langford being at $745,000 in West Hills right now. So affordable housing is a dream. And if we're not proactive as a council and looking at pre-zoning and things that are really creative, we're not going to get there. This development is the right place, and it's going to be better. Is it the perfect development? No. Is it better than what we've seen over the last 10 or 11 years? Big moonscape up there and people blasting and blowing holes in and covering people's houses with dust? No. I'm happy that I'm going to support this motion to get it done once and for all. And I'm happy that the developer's at the table. This developer's been here each and every time. We've had people come in and promise us all kinds of things and promise neighbors all kinds of things and walked away from deals, millions of dollars going out the back. So anyways, I'm going to support it.
Okay, thank you, councillors. I'm still torn supporting this. There is no affordable housing component in this at all. I think that that we've said it, and that's very clear. This project is geared to the builders who want to build, not to the residents. I didn't hear any consultation with residents and with current stakeholders, which are the neighbors in here. Some developers have community sort of forums where they invite residents in saying, here's what is planned and here's what we want to do and here's what we're thinking of, and I'm not hearing that. So only residents who may have had the opportunity to attend tonight or send email submissions are aware that that's happening. It's a difficult one because it's hard to compare what was to be and what is proposed to be. And so in terms of what Councillor Berger is saying in terms of a zoning like this is looking what allow in the zone. So we are taking a rural residential zone and turning it into small lot subdivision. So that is part of this public hearing. That's taking rural residential of over 1,000 meters square into 350. So that is a difference there. You know, it's all part of what is in the CD zone, but that's part of here. That's noted here. It's rezoning 7,000 into RU4 to small lot R3. So that's part of what this proposal is. In the previous zone, there is a lot of challenges in it, but affordable housing is completely defined in here. It's available for rent at or below the average rent for Victoria as determined by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp. 30% of the median income level for the 2 or more person households. Updated annually from the BC Consumer Price Index. It's stated in there. In terms of a previous comment from Ms. Lewers, I believe, about whether or not that former zone would have allowed suites in all zones, it only would have in lots that were 500 meters square or 550 meters square. So even though there was a larger number, the secondary suites on lots as a use are only available on that lot size or larger. So that's, whereas here it could be in all over. I appreciate that it's a challenging site and that there has been challenges over the years, and the residents have sat there and endured that, so I empathize with them and the series of promises that were made. But now, we are hearing different things being said on the fly. I'm still not certain what is being guaranteed to these residents. There's been some comments made that it'll get resolved at Covenant or whatever, but there's still, when this public hearing closes, I don't know what that looks like. It's sort of being said to this or that person, and there's no certainty, and it's sort of stated on the fly because it's in a response to what came up in the public hearing. So that leads me to believe that in terms of neighborhood consultation and talking to the neighbor, that hasn't happened. So there's a concern for me there in turn. No, you can't speak. The public hearing is closed. So that means that in order to hear more from members of the public, we would have to schedule another public hearing and delay this process. So that's just process-wise how that works. So yes, I'll see what other colleagues around the table have to say about this, but I'm still on the fence with it. Councillor Berger.
Thank you. Just for my own clarification, through you to staff, procedurally prior to final adoption, can we receive any written agreements from the applicant with respects to sewer line on Maple Park Terrace?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, I'm just running that one through my head. So, is it whether that's going to be new information or not prior to final, because council can't receive any new information after the close of the public hearing. So I'm just trying to figure out if that's new information or just it's something that's proven, and then so I've drafted a motion there that would allow the developer just to provide that assurance prior to final. So I don't believe that it would be new information.
If we stipulate it in the motion.
Correct. So I've done a two-parter there, that prior to adoption, the developer prove that sewer connections can be made to the properties located between 7047 and 7076 Mountain Park Terrace, and that the developer enter into a Section 219 covenant to provide 100%, and sorry if I don't have this right, let me know, 100% of sewer infrastructure costs up to a maximum of $40,000 to connect said properties to the sewer system.
Okay. My second comment, so that, for me, that's the sticking point. My second comment is just based around this going from a CD zone to a residential zone. And again, in a comprehensive development zone, it's an all-encompassing document. Every single thing is laid out right at the get-go, and we have to know absolutely everything, right down to lot lines and everything to do with the comprehensive development. The zone that's being presented now is to change to a residential zone, which allows the developer to then follow the market. So it's a stepped way of doing things. So they get the zone. So right now, all we should be looking at and talking about is density on that property. Then next comes subdivision, then development permit, form and character, everything that comes with that. So I think that's where it's getting a little bit gray too. I think we have to wrap our heads, or I have to wrap my head around the fact that this is strictly looking at density. We can't look at what was in the comprehensive development zone if that's not what we're going to keep. If everyone wants to keep exactly what's in that comprehensive zone, then we want 400 houses with huge condo apartments. We want huge onerous change of landscape in the CD zone. So for me, I support changing to the residential zone. The sticky point for me was getting that prior to final adoption. And if through clarification from our corporate officer, we can receive something that satisfies my needs.
So, Ms. Machado?
Yes, hi, sorry. Your Worship, we just become aware that we can't assign a dollar value to this connection cost. So the only way I think that this could be done would just be to pay 100% of sewer infrastructure costs and then remove the maximum of $40,000. So we cannot assign a dollar value to the covenant.
Okay, so that would have to be struck out then. It would just be to contribute 100%. Okay.
That's yes.
Okay,
As
so that would
there
be
now.
another.
Thank you.
That would be another motion.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Anything else from members of council? All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, so the first then, it's all those in favor of third reading then to bylaw number 694, zoning amendment. That second part is another separate motion. So all those in favor of third reading? Opposed? Councillor Loggins, Parkinson, and myself are opposed, so the motion carries. And then the second part is that prior to adoption, the developer, pardon me? Oh, sorry, we're in a tie vote.
Yes, so the motion
okay, we
would
are.
fail.
Sorry, the motion fails. Okay, so that second part doesn't apply. Okay, so then the current zoning is what stands, and the developer is welcome to connect with our planning staff and to see what may potentially be a fit for that property. Okay, so moving on in the agenda, just being mindful of the time. Okay, we move into our delegation section, and we'd like to welcome 6.1, Zoning Bylaw Compliance and Enforcement, 5536 Sooke Road. Forward, please. Okay, welcome, Ms. Lewers, and you have 5 minutes as your delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to read a letter that I received from from corporate officer about the Casinos land use conformity issues. Dry lips. Further to discussions regarding business licensing and land use compliance issues in the Casinos area, the District of Sooke is currently gathering more information on land uses as permitted by Bylaw number 600, Sooke Zoning Bylaw 2013, and non-conforming land use issues on properties in the Casinos area of Sooke. A review of the bylaw and non-conforming land uses will require significant staff resources and time to complete. Additional information will be communicated to you when available. This was given to us on April 30th. So this is, I've met with staff, we've met with staff, we've had some discussion, and I see that nothing is happening, so I'm here to request the following. That Council address the historical and ongoing bylaw infractions at 5536 Sooke Road, also known as driver welding, fabrication, and steel sales. The industrial operation that continues to operate daily on this property is on a piece of property that is designated as agricultural in Sooke's OCP and is zoned RU3, which is the zone dedicated to small-scale agriculture, and a zone that has been attached to this property well to prior Sooke Incorporation in 1999. A zone which, besides residential, has permitted uses of agriculture, intensive agriculture, and aquaculture. The property in question dates back in use as a farm to 1921 and had related uses such until around 2006, when the current owner started to make significant changes to the use of the property and the industrial nature of his operation, in which up to that point had included the erection of a large industrial building, a building that was constructed without a building permit from the District of Sooke. Since that time, further buildings have been built, scrap metal brought in and stored on site, RVs brought in to house renters with wastewater connections that are questionable. Fifth-wheel trailer units brought in for storage and auto body repair and paint shop installed, sales of steel and industrial welding gases, several feet of soil removed without permit, with truckloads of blasted rock hauled in, effectively destroying the agricultural nature of this property. Along with the expanded industrial use and scale of the operation, of course, has come longer business hours, more employees, and of course more traffic, more noise, and pollution associated with this kind of an operation. This is a property which abuts ALR property, the C2C Green Belt, Galloping Goose Park, AM Creek Park Reserve, and our ongoing organic farm operation at 5526 Sooke Road. At this moment, I would like to remind Council that this property was bought by Mr. Driver in September 2000, almost a year after Sooke Incorporated. He bought this property with the current zoning, along with the uses permitted attached to that zoning, none of which have ever allowed an industrial business of this nature to be in allowed use. This means that it is not and never has been legal non-conforming, but in fact from day one has been purely illegal. It also is my understanding that up till 2014, that property owner was claiming farm status on this property, and what can only be seen as an attempt to avoid paying taxes that reflect the true use of this property. Of course, this sort of action leads to unfair tax burden to the balance of Sooke taxpayers, especially those that run their business in a properly zoned tax property. These other law-abiding businesses struggle to comply and deal with financial costs associated to compliance with bylaws and regulations, with costs of engineers, environmental assessments, legal fees, application fees, permit fees, all while businesses like this one skirt all the above and completely unfairly in the marketplace and compete unfairly in the marketplace, and especially unfairly on local government projects. The current situation sees this property functioning as full-time industrial welding shop, including constructing ship hulls, car repair shop, car sales, auto body and car painting, steel and industrial gas sales, outside storage, housing project, and at many points looks like an automotive wrecking yard with unsightly storage. As a result of the extent of this operation, it has impacted our serenity, our enjoyment of house and home, and the resale value of our property. It has resulted in a loss of integrity to our property through the removal of fences, which have allowed wildlife such as bears and deer to roam more freely. This has required us to construct new fences that are solid so as not only keep out wildlife that impact our farm, but to attempt to restrict noise and unsightly premises next door. Due to recent changes on the property, we are once again faced with having to build more solid fence to try to minimize daily impacts of the operation. The owner of this property is unaware prior to 2007 as the nature of the legality of his operation, certainly became aware at 2007 as the district bought in its business licensing bylaw, and the owner was sent a letter requesting a business license. As such, he applied, but was denied one.
Ms. Lewers, I need you to wrap up. That's 5 minutes.
I need an extension, please, because it's
Okay, I'll
very
put that
quick.
to council then.
This is
Council
yes,
needs
please.
to grant an extension.
Thank you. This is a serious issue that's been ongoing for too many years.
Someone prepared to grant an extension?
I move the extension.
Councillor Parkinson is granting a further 5-minute extension.
For the 5 minutes.
Okay, by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor of the extension of 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Opposed? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you kindly. The owner of this property, if unaware prior to 2007, as the nature of the legality of its operation certainly became aware in 2007, as the District of Sooke brought in its business licensing bylaw, and the owner was sent a letter requesting a business license. As such, he applied but was denied one, as his property was not a legal operation with respect to many bylaws. He's also had several site visits by both past fire chiefs as well as the current chief, and by law enforcement. Despite this knowledge, he has continued to expand his operation, seemingly willfully flaunting the District of Sooke and its bylaws and regulations without consequence and with impunity. At this time, I'd like to ask Mayor and Council if this person had set up this business in Sun River, Stone Ridge, or Heronview, would you approve such use, or direct staff to ignore the legal nature of the business? Why does Council make bylaws? What is the purpose of said bylaws? What is the job of a bylaw enforcement officer? As near as I can tell, the following bylaws are being broken on an ongoing basis, and every person who contravenes a provision of the bylaw, and this is in your own zoning bylaw, or who consents, allows, or permits an act or thing to be done in violation of a provision of the bylaw, commits an offense punishable upon summary conviction, and is liable to a fine not exceeding $10,000. This bylaw may be enforced by means of a ticket in the form prescribed for the purpose of S-264 of the Community Charter, or by bylaw notice issued under the Local Government Bylaw Notice Enforcement Act. Bylaw 600 zoning, each day the offense continues, is a separate offense as well as $10,000 fine on summary conviction. The following are some of the bylaws that are being broken in your zoning bylaw: 3.2A, 3.2D, 3.17A, 3.17C, 3.24, 3.26, 3.30, 4.3A, 4.3D, 4.3E, 4.3G, 4.3J, 4.3L, 4.3K, 4.3M, all of them, and 4.87. And bylaw 480, sign bylaw, all of which 8.24 A, B, and C, all of which are 2 times the permit fee and fines for every day of the offense. Bylaw 301, business bylaw, no license, 2 times application fee, $250 fines for every day of the offense. As a council, you have a general public duty and a duty to care to ensure the bylaws you have enacted are enforced. And this is why you hire a bylaw officer and delegate that authority. As such, failure to do so exposes the district to a liability, including but not limited to negligence. In this case, there are no less than 16 bylaws that are being broken on a daily basis, accruing daily fines of around $2,500 per day if they were being enforced. Ignorance of the law can no longer be used as an excuse by council, staff, or by the property owner. It has been over 7 months since the property owner brought his request before council, and over 11 years of an industrial illegal use on this property, and there has been no enforcement action taken thus far. I therefore insist that council instruct staff to do the jobs they are hired to do and enforce the bylaws of the district on the property at 5536 Sooke Road immediately and unequivocally. Please. Thank you. And for your information, this is the 1921. This is our property. This is including the farm next door of selling the land. It's down at the museum, just for your information, for farming, fruit growing, and poultry and garden trucks. So I'd appreciate it if something was done immediately. This has been too long, ongoing too long, and it's destroyed agricultural land. It's totally against our OCP. It's destructive of farming. And when we see what's going on in the world, and we see how lands are being devastated all over, and food is a really important thing. And it's in Casinos, in your OCP, you will see that Casinos is equivalent to Saanich peninsula and growing, and all that beautiful soil that was removed, and there was nothing done to stop it. Even though I called the district to say the soil being removed from this property, is there a permit? I was told there's no permit needed, but you all know that that's not so. So I would like to see this dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
I didn't show the pictures, but I don't know if you saw them. Those pictures are pictures of what it was when Mr. Driver bought the property. That's exactly what it looked like. And that's what we bought. That's what we live by. And now we live by, where is that? Well, you can all see it from the road. Yeah. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewers, and thank you for also providing this in writing to us. Okay, our second delegation this evening, EMCS Student Art Bus Shelter Project. Ms. Sooke Garat. Councillor Loggins?
I understand there's an ask along with this proposal, so because it is connected to my employer, I'll step out.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Loggins. And go ahead, Ms. Garat. Welcome. There's 5. Will be. Thank you very much for that procedural reminder. Okay, we are good. Thank you and welcome.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for your continued support of the bus shelter project and for your support again this year. As you probably know, we are now in our 11th year of the project. The initial purpose of the project was to stop the egregious vandalism that was happening in the core of our town. The vandalism was, as Mayor, you pointed out earlier, very expensive to constantly clean up and repair. It was also very unsightly, and we felt sent the wrong message as to what our town was for visitors and residents alike, particularly right in the core of our town. Once we installed the student art, the bus shelter has never been vandalized. Even with this most recent red spray paint tag that happened quite a bit around town, the bus shelter in the center of town was not touched at all. I feel that that's partially because the art is changed regularly. I find that when people become accustomed to something, that's when it gets tagged. So the fact that the art is changed regularly, I think, helps with that. Other benefits of the project are in direct relation to the youth. Many youth, despite the bravado of teenagers, are quite reluctant to display their art, but they've come to know that the bus shelter in the centre of Sooke is a safe public venue for them, and they're quite proud to have their art displayed there. Frequently, when the art is changed over the next day, I get many students that come and say, "Oh, Ms. Garat, I saw my art in the bus shelter," or "I took my grandma to see my painting in the bus shelter." They're really quite proud to have their art displayed there. We've also been able to include art from all of the elementary schools, as well as Journey and Sooke as well. This year, students have taken on a greater responsibility. I have 2 advanced placement students that have taken on the role of curator. It's excellent experience for them. They go through the art, they choose the pieces that they feel go with the season, go together, they put the display together, and then they change the art out as well. So this has given them better responsibility, greater ownership, and also direct participation in the continuation of the beautification of our town core. So while this project has been a huge success, we do recognize that it is no longer a new project, and so that puts us in a bit of a gray area in terms of applying for the community grant. So we're suggesting that, as has been suggested to us in the past, that perhaps it become a line item. The amount that I'm requesting of $1,600 is because every year, I'm sure you've noticed, the amount that I request varies, and that is solely dependent on sales that I can get a hold of, or if there's discontinued paint that I can buy at a lower cost. So the $1,600 is I've taken the amounts that I've asked for over the years and averaged it. But I'm hoping that you agree that this is a mutually beneficial project and that you would choose to support it.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. I totally agree that this has been a very successful project, and just the cost of having to replace the glass when the shelter was smashed out or damaged is significant, and right in the town center, it is a very negative image for our community. And I just think that the art it's an excellent amenity, and I would support this being a budget line item. Mainly this is municipal infrastructure. It's in our town center. It's proven to be successful, and I think the cost of $1,600 is minimal, just as opposed to what we would have to pay to keep like for the overall maintenance. The student art connection there is fabulous for our community, so I would support that. Councillor Parkinson?
So I'd like to move the recommendation that the EMCS Student Bus Shelter Art Project become a line item for the $1,600.
Okay, so that's basically for the 2019-2023 five-year financial plan, the amount of $1,600, because this year it's been awarded already, so it'll be in the coming years. So that's moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion to add on that from members of council? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this forward. That's excellent. Okay, if we could have Councillor Loggins returned, we'll turn to the public question and comment section of tonight's agenda. So this will be for all items on tonight's agenda with the exception of the public hearing, because that matter is closed. So any other item? Thank you for your patience to those remaining.
Gail Hall, 2517 Sooke River Road. I just have a question, reference the seniors drop-in center and the proposal to hand over the dollars. Could someone please give me the number of the bylaw that created that fund?
Do we, can I turn that to staff? Do we have that? Do you know that answer?
Your Worship, I don't have that in my memory. It was 2013, I believe, when there was the bylaw or resolution to transfer the monies from the casino fund into this account.
Without a bylaw, as I know, as I've studied here, you do not have a reserve fund if you don't have a bylaw. So this is why then I want to see it.
Do we have a bylaw in place for this? Can I get that?
Your Worship, we do have a reserve fund in our audited statement, so it does have a bylaw. I just don't know the number off the top of my head.
I've searched every document that's got bylaws for the district, and if you're going to move the cash, and I have no particular problem with that, but there should be, the bylaw should be included so that we know what activity takes place while that money is moved. I mean, you just can't out the money, although you're quite good at it. I don't have a problem with the money going over. I have a problem with not having the proper procedure in front of you in order to do that. And I cannot find a bylaw which establishes the seniors/youth reserve fund. I've looked and looked and looked, and other people have looked on my behalf. So until you have that, I don't believe you can make that move. After you have it, fine. Go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hall. Other speakers this evening on any items on the agenda with the exception of the public hearing?
Hi, Michael Volk, 4923 Townsend Drive. So as I said, I'm not very good at the process, but I'm getting a little better.
You're unable to speak on that public hearing. It's closed, so we can't receive any further comment on it. It had its own designated section on the agenda for that particular item, if that's what you're here to speak to tonight.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I was going to talk about the project in general because I had...
No, sorry, sir. It's procedurally out of order.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Ellen Lewers, 5526 Sooke Road. I too was concerned when I saw there was nothing there to say that there was a bylaw established, and I too researched and couldn't find the bylaw. And it should say in here what the bylaw is and what it's for, and we don't see that. And I don't think that this should be dealt with until you know that there is a bylaw and that the bylaw actually says what it's supposed to be used for, or if it's there. I think that should be tabled.
Okay,
if you
thank
can't
you.
find it. And another comment I have in view of head planning, development permit delegation, on page 83, it says the head of planning may issue, amend, refuse, impose requirements, set conditions, standards, etc., and approve the following types of development permits, including commercial, industrial, or institutional developments of 2,500 square meters or less of gross floor area. So I don't know if that includes what's going on to our next door property or not, and I would be quite concerned if that would be something that could go on without going through council. I think we have to be careful what we delegate to staff and what is the responsibility of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewers. Are there members of the public for any items except for the public hearing? Can you please turn on your microphone, Ms. Bernard, or the microphone, base of the stem? Thank you.
Is that it? I just wanted to know, can I make a comment on Ellen Lewers' letter that she read? Is that possible?
Yes, you're welcome to do that.
All right, thank you. So it's Diane Bernard, 2018 Penang Road here in Sooke. And the issue that she's raising, and sitting here and hearing this, and being here throughout several of these events that she's raised this, I think on two levels. One is a resident of Sooke, of which we all have homes, and something like this happening in your neighborhood. The other one is as a commercial operator, myself, paying commercial taxes, abiding by all the rules, following everything. And for her to read this out, and quite frankly, no comment from council. And I don't know whether that's because of the situation or what, but to have it like that, because I just sort of think as kindness or as information, or is there something that council can say to give assurances to residences as well as commercial operators that something is moving on this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard, for that feedback. Other speakers on tonight's agenda? Okay, so that brings us in order here to 10.1. We moved that up when we approved the agenda. So that would be the Sooke Seniors Project. And is staff presenting on this? Sorry, Ms. Panelski, I can recognize you as a speaker when that opportunity arises. You won't be able to speak at this time.
No, I thought that the staff was bringing it up. I didn't know.
All right, well, thank you for hanging out with us.
Okay.
Mr. Blackhall?
Thank you, Your Worship. Page 111 of the package is where the report is found. So it's the staff has met with the Sooke Seniors group regarding this project and their request, and that's the reason the report is in front of you. There are some grant funds available that the group would like to get moving on, and that requires a bit of other pieces to fall into place, and that's why we have brought the report forward. The Seniors Youth Reserve has or would have a balance of $252,577 and 53 cents before any interest is allocated for the year, and that would include the final payment up for 2018 from the casino reserve. So the group would like that reserve to be committed for the purpose of their project. They would also like to use a portion of Lot A for the project, and that we just would also like the council direct us then to enter into any agreements that we may need to get in place and negotiate if needed for this project should council wish it to go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blackhall. Can I please just get clarity from staff on the matter that Ms. Hall and Ms. Lewers brought up, just on procedurally and the bylaw and how that would work? I see in this recommendation that there would be some further agreements and the like that would come forward, and tonight the recommendation would be just to agree in principle. So would we expect to see that bylaw or those matters returned to council in an upcoming meeting? I'd just procedurally like to know that what's going to roll out.
Your Worship, thank you. For us to actually expend any money out of the reserve fund would require an amendment to the financial plan bylaw. If we're not expending any money out of the reserve, it wouldn't require that. So the group just wants to know, I think, that in principle that reserve is for their purpose. So.
I see. And just we have passed a motion recently about providing already agreement in principle that for this project to land on Lot A. We did that earlier this year, so that's sort of in place. Okay, no, that sounds good. Councillor Casper, please.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation, and if there's a seconder, I'll just speak to it very briefly.
Okay, are you moving the entire thing in all one block?
All three, all in one block.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Casper. Do I have a seconder for that? Second. Councillor Parkinson is seconding that. Go ahead.
So if I may speak to it, for the past 4 years, our auditors have reviewed all our financial statements, have gone through all of the reserve funds that have been established by council, and we've met all of the... Sorry,
Councillor Casper. Gentlemen, can the whispering just tone down, or can you take it outside? It's just distracting. Okay.
And I've never seen anything in those reports from our auditor saying that the district isn't complying with our statutory requirements in establishing reserve funds. We have a whole host of them, and they've been recognized by both the province, because the province ultimately gets a copy of our bylaws for our budget and our 5-year financial plan. So I don't have a problem with addressing that issue front and center. I think it's important that we do sit down with all the parties that may be involved with this proposal, and they've been identified in the staff report. That's just good business practice, but in order for the seniors to actually pursue and other parties who are interested in providing an affordable housing component for seniors, we've got to get something in writing, and we have to do it properly, because I think everybody would agree to move that forward. This resolution should in fact be improved. I just want to add one comment at the Forum for Aging in the Community, with some form of grace and dignity. It was clearly brought out on May 18th on a Friday, and it was a great day, well attended, 100 participants. And what I heard there, and I think others who attended, know Councillor Parkinson was there, and Councillor Pearson was there briefly, and I extended greetings on behalf of Mayor and Council to the group. But what I heard and what others heard was that it's important for this type of facility to be in place, because it will allow those who are aging to have a better, healthy outcome for their life, because connecting with the community, connecting with youth, connecting with the core area and some of their own will actually improve their quality of life and perhaps their longevity. So this is an important project for this community, and if we can hopefully get something done by taking these steps, then I think we're all going to be better off. So I hope Council will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Casper. I think that's extremely well said. Nothing to add. I just know that Council can't do everything, and we need to work with others to see things come through. So I think this is just moving in the right direction. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I agree with the recommendation, and I'm not 100% sure about our bylaw, whether we have to have one in place. As staff checked on that?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Parkinson, there's always the ability to internally restrict funds. So you can, within your restricted funds, you can have internal and external restrictions. So we used to have internal restricted funds within our liabilities balance on the balance sheet instead of in the reserves, and then the auditors throughout the years have been requesting us to make sure it's actually in the reserve funds part and get rid of any that didn't have a bylaw. So I will make sure that it has a bylaw attached to it. It was back in 2013, so I'll have to do some digging, but I can't find it right. We've done a quick little search, and you know, we need to really dig into SharePoint, because if it's not on our website, it's not visible to the public, and it's not on the website. So
I printed it off the website. I have it, and I don't have it with me.
okay. So anyway, we'll find it.
Go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
So what the agreement is to agree to it in principle, which I agree with, and I think that the Sooke seniors should be able to go forward and seek other grant monies to be able to move forward with their project. I'm happy to hear that that you wish to do that, and I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Other comments from members of council? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Perhaps staff, just following on a comment raised by Councillor Casper, if maybe a committee of the whole could be scheduled where we invite all parties to the table, and I think that might be the best setting perhaps. And then we can just look at what these next steps look like, what the procedure is, and sort of hash that all out there perhaps. The other thing that perhaps council can consider, and I wouldn't mind hearing a resolution to this effect, is that we have two pieces of Lot A now that have been committed, and the balance is a bit unknown. So I think it's timely that some sort of a charrette or something needs to occur so that we can just sort of outline a framework for that rest of that parcel, so that we know where we know where the library is going. We have yet to determine where this is. I think we could all argue at what corner would be best, but there is the balance and there's other pressing needs, and I just think we need some sort of overall something for it. Councillor Loggins?
I would like to make a motion that we have a community meeting consultation about what to do with Lot A and where to put things. It's something I've been asking for about 2 years.
Let me have a seconder. Seconder. Okay, you've already spoken to it, but yes, it's the motion that I've been waiting for, and for council to bring something forward. I'm glad to see that's here. So a community event, a charrette, whatever language is best suited to make this happen would be great. Okay, that is kind of on the fly, but I think it's something that is timely given the nature of this. Speaking to it, Councillor Loggins?
I don't believe this is a motion on the fly. It's something I've asked for the past 2 years, so that we have a discussion about Lot A and decide in advance what we do with it before we start parting off with chunks of it. So I'm glad that this is finally coming forward.
Yeah, I'm not going to debate that point. It's just it wasn't like a recommendation that we had a report attached to. It's just business arising. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. I think we've already spoken, but we can move on. Okay. Bylaws 9.1. We have a report here regarding bylaw number 704, Election Procedures Amendment Bylaw. Ms. Mushada?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, this is a very insignificant amendment to our election bylaw. Currently, the bylaw says that we can it doesn't indicate that we can post election information on our website, and we are required through the legislation to do so if we want to make it available on our website. Typically in other jurisdictions where I've run elections, we have done that, and so that gives us the option or the ability to post candidate nomination packages online, and saves the public, media, whoever, from having to come into the district hall during business hours to view those documents.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Parkinson?
Move recommendation.
Second. Okay, so you're moving first reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Councillor Loggins is the seconder. You're agreeing with that? Okay, any discussion on first reading? All those in favor?
Move second.
Opposed? This carried unanimously. Councillor Parkinson, moving second reading. Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Third reading, Councillor Parkinson. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for bringing that forward. Bylaw number 705, Development Permit Delegation Bylaw. This came out of the Land Use Committee, Development Land Use Committee recommendation that came at the last meeting, and now we have something forward. Councillor Berger, or I'll turn to staff, but I'll turn to you as well as the chair for comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council, Your Worship. We're here to request for second and third reading to the Development Permit Delegation Bylaw number 705. This delegates authority to the head of planning for approvals for certain development permits. Per Council's request on May 14th, the report in front of you provides options for your consideration and staff recommends option 1 for adoption. As outlined in the report, option 1 does the following. It removes reference to number of units and creates a subsection 4A that's intended to alleviate some of the current concerns that were brought up by Council on May 14th regarding what types of DPs should be brought to Council. And they are as follows. Any development permit variance, which is a requirement of the Local Government Act. Any development permit that forms part of a phased development agreement per the original Bylaw 305. Any development permits within areas designated town centre per the OCP. Any development permit within a comprehensive development zone in the Sooke zoning bylaw, and any DPs on lands owned by the district. The bylaw is also clear regarding reconsiderations of decisions that are made by the head of planning that can go to Council if the applicant so chooses. Option 2 would be to reinstate the bylaw as it was originally worded in 2009 with no changes. Option 3 would be to adopt the bylaw with minor changes as proposed originally in the May 14th meeting, which just proposed removal of the number of units. So neither option 2 nor 3 address the concerns noted by Council, nor my commitment voiced at Council on the 14th to bring certain DPs for consideration, where option 1 addresses both of those things. In addition, as noted in the report, delegating development permit approvals to a staff member, such as a head of planning, is commonly done throughout the surrounding jurisdictions, and I can confirm that Victoria, Langford, and Colwood do the same. The Development Committee and staff agree that delegating authority back to administration through the head of planning will assist in cutting red tape for the applicants, allow staff to manage work more effectively, shorten agendas for Council, and ultimately contribute to fostering a culture of customer service. And that's all I have to say for that, if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. I'd like to go to Councillor Berger, as you've chaired the Land Use Committee since its formed. So just any comment on the options?
Yes, thank you. We spent the better part of one whole meeting just talking about the delegation of development permits. It's something that we, yourself and myself, have gone back and forth with over our time at this council table. And I think the main thing is just trusting the plans that we have in place. A development permit is only form and character. So it's only looking at what that building looks like. There's no other ask, there's no other requirement with a development permit. It's really just the form and character of that building. And the reason why commercial buildings come back that are over 2,500 square feet is I think it's a regulation throughout. I can't remember what we talked about. Local Government Act, I believe through you to Ivy. Miss Campbell. I believe there was some sort of regulation with commercial that most large commercial developments had to come to council table, regardless of a delegation.
There's some language in our OCP related to that, but there's nothing through legislation.
Okay, thank you. And we do have our town centre plan as well. With it has guidelines that we approved. I believe last council approved it with form and character and what the town centre design guidelines would look like. So the rest of the committee at the development meeting all felt in favor that this would be one way to sort of expedite development within our community. And it's all market driven anyhow when we look at what a building looks like and what people are going to be selling and what's palatable to consumers.
Okay, thank you. And I agree that this is fine to do. It saves the time because otherwise a report would need to be drafted to council. That comes forward to us, and then sometimes, from what I've seen, we've just approved with minimal debate because the reports are pretty solid and everything is in place. The only thing I would like to see, and part of the reason why it shifted, we've delegated, we brought it back, is that council is in the loop sometimes when it comes before council and sort of we know what's happening, but then it's all subject. It's all subject to when the applicant decides to progress something with the permit. So we may see something happen. It may not actually materialize within a year or so. But at least it kind of gives you a heads up as to what's coming. So I don't know if there's some way that some sort of report back to council can occur, maybe on a quarterly basis, where we get just a sense of what the activity is. I like stats, so I like to see, how permits, what they were this year versus last year, even a trend, where you see the trends over what are people applying for. And then when we sort of hear, it helps us, I think, as we go into the budget process, when we know what funding to allocate for staff, for training, for resources, for plans and the like, we can actually see all that build. And I think that helps to understanding when more staff is needed or training or shifts or changes or whatever. So just some sort of report back. Right now we're just getting our annual report, so waiting to see that, but it would be helpful just so we understand what's happening. Mr. Blackwell?
Yes, Your Worship, thanks for that. And definitely we can provide a report on a quarterly basis of the activity sooner if council would like. I get it as needed from the head of planning, so we definitely have the information available.
Yeah, I mean, even just to have one, and then we can look at the frequency. Like, I don't want then staff to then spend all their time doing these reports to us. So, because then again, that's time. But even twice a year would give us a sense as to what's happening. Councillor Berger?
Yeah, thank you. I just was going to add that would be a fantastic thing for the public and council to see with respects to all development. It would be great to see how many rezones are coming through subdivisions. It would be really a good, positive thing for our community just to get out there, too, to see how busy we are.
Exactly. Great. Okay, so we have a recommendation before us.
I will move the recommended option 1.
Okay, so that's first reading then to bylaw number 705, development permit delegation bylaw with option 1. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. And speaking to it, Councillor, do you have anything further to add as the mover? Councillor Parkinson?
Through you, Your Worship. With the option 1 where 4A is any single family residential developments and multi-B, so that's up to any number of lots that would go through the head of planning?
Through Your Worship, could you repeat that?
So option 1, 4A and B, where it says any single-family residential developments and multifamily, that's up. Before it used to be 25 and over would come back to council, but now that's not the case. So it doesn't matter what the number is, it would just be confirmed by the head of planning?
That is correct, with the exception of any multi or single that occurs in the town centre or as part of a phased development agreement or in any special development permit area that's designated in the OCP.
So what does that leave?
Well, at least,
Just, if I may, Councillor Parkinson, I think it would leave any variances, any part of a phased development agreement are within the OCP. The CD zones, lands owned by the district. You were kidding? Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Didn't have your microphone on. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor of first reading? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Parkinson is opposed. Looking for mover of second reading. Moved second by Councillor Loggins. Seconded by Councillor Casper. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson's opposed. And third reading, please. Third by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Casper. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson's opposed. All the motions carry. Okay, moving on to 10.2, a development permit. This is exactly... Pardon me? Did I miss one? I'm sorry. Okay. 9.2. 9.3, council procedure amendments. How about that?
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's really just a housekeeping measure to reflect the changes to legislation to move the general voting day from November to October. which now changes automatically the inaugural meeting from December to November.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So looking for a mover of first reading, please, to bylaw number 706. Councillor Berger has moved it, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. It's carried unanimously. Second reading, please. Move second by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And third, please. Third by Councillor Berger and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Okay, so next then is the development permit. Correct? Right. 9.2. So this is what we just spoke about, and when it should pass, we won't see. Again. Thank you and welcome.
Through your worship, it's nice to see some of you again and some of you for the first time. I'm Tanisha Everts. It's a hard name to say, so I thought I'd give you a heads up. Nice to meet you, and here we are for a development permit, which... Okay, so we're here for the construction of 22 townhouse units at 2119 Charters Road. As you can see, here's the site presently. In 2007, it was rezoned to medium-density multifamily, RM3 at that time. It's currently zoned medium-density multifamily, RM2. The predominant land uses around it are large lot residential, R1, and medium lot residential, R2. I'd like to correct my reference to village residential zones in my report. New planner making up zones, always a good way to go. As you can see, the site's currently an open field. There's some invasive vegetation, aka broom, and a mobile home on the northwest corner of the property. The applicant's proposing 22 units in the RM2 zone. Currently, that zone would allow 38 units on the site. He's proposing 22 three-bedroom units that are each about 1,400 square feet in size. The proposed development meets the DPA Area 3 multifamily objectives and guidelines by using West Coast design aesthetics, a mix of materials, the greens, and natural and native vegetation. It includes single-car garages, single-car driveways, and 11 visitor spots for a total of 55 parking spots. The requirement in multifamily is 1.5 per unit, which would be 33 here, and we have a total of 55. Bike parking was not addressed on the DP because of the garages. The applicant's providing an amenity area of 600 meters squared, which is about 6,500 square feet, and the requirement for the zone is 589 meters squared. The proposed development has two accesses off of Charters Road. There's a duplex off the one side, and then the main access to the remaining 20 units. The amenity space is on the northern boundary. That boundary will have that cedar fence that has the environmentally sensitive area signage and a pedestrian path forest walk following it eastward. At the time of building permit, the owner will register a 30-meter riparian setback along Thrope Stream. This will impact this particular lot very little. It's about 25 meters right now from the lot line to the stream. You're going to see that along the northern boundary. The required landscape screening has been in place around the hydro and the garbage enclosure areas. And the applicant responded to staff concerns about the individual garbage pickup in his initial proposal. There were some concerns about Thrope Stream having bears frequent there. So the individual garbage was nixed for a communal central waste area that can be enclosed on the southeast corner. Here's the proposed development in a larger context. The blue squares there are the bus stops. They represent the east and westbound transit stops on either side of the highway. Those are within a 5-minute walk or 400 meters of the site. Art Morris Park is north of the site, and Journey Elementary School and Sooke Elementary School are both nearby. This form of development ensures that individuals and families of varying incomes and demographics can have access to more affordable and attainable housing options and be close to amenities and services to perhaps lessen their reliance on a vehicle. The applicant has volunteered 22 $22,000 or $1,000 per unit to the Housing Reserve Fund, bylaw number 259, for affordable housing. And please note that the applicant weighed-in is in the corner there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evert, for the presentation. I'm comfortable supporting this. The location is excellent for this. I like the 3 bedrooms for the townhomes for families. That's really important. It's also in very close proximity to Sea Park through the trail connection down the end of Throop, which is great, and also through to town. There's one question I had. You mentioned that there was a trail through this. Where does that trail go? Where does it connect to? Is there another trail within our system that it would line up with?
Through your worship, it's not an actual trail. It's referred to as a forest walk. So if you see along the kind of curved boundary where the bench is on the northeastern bound, there's the gathering space, and then there's a little path along that fenced rail. It's referred to just internally as a forest walk.
Okay.
Because pedestrian and movement within the lot was part of the initial covenants from the original rezoning.
And then I would also just make a recommendation to consider from a safety perspective with the centralized garbage area, which I think is great given the bears and even raccoons in that area, that some sort of motion light sensor be put in so that if people are putting their stuff out, you're not going out in the dark to try to open and properly close containers and the like. So if there is some way to have a light there.
Through your worship, there is there's solar-powered lighting around that enclosure.
Okay, that works. Great, thank you. Other comments from members of council? All right, so looking for council to move the recommendation then. Moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Casper. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So thank you for bearing with us, gentlemen, and good luck with your project. Okay, so moving on then to 10.3, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the, again, impending election, Council is required to appoint a chief election officer. That is a requirement of my duties, so there is a motion there to appoint myself. Our deputy chief election officer is Patty Rear, who of course is on leave, but we do anticipate and hope that she will be back before the general election, so she is still to be appointed deputy corporate officer. As the chief election officer, I would have the ability to appoint other election officers as well.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
Move recommendation that council appoint Carolyn Mushata, corporate officer, as chief election officer for the 2018 local government election, with power to appoint other election officials as required for the administration and conduct of the 2018 local government election pursuant to Section 58 of the Local Government Act.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion on this? Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just through you to staff. What's going to happen with the school board when they run their election? Usually, everything's done in the same premises or buildings, and
yes, that's correct. I have been in touch with the chief election officer for the school board trustees and have an arrangement in place. Their candidates will be on our ballot, and there's a cost apportionment for that already determined.
So have they approached you to get you to be the officer in question?
No, Tom Moore is the chief election officer for the school district.
All right. Okay,
so essentially, we will handle the ballots for those people, and their candidates will be on our ballots.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And then the second part then is that council appoint Patty Rear, deputy corporate officer. Okay. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion there? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. 10.4 is a recommendation, appointment of bylaw enforcement officer. So back to Ms. Mushata.
Thank you, Your Worship. In light of the injury to our current bylaw officer, we have had an intermediate need to bring in a contract bylaw, or not a bylaw contract. He's been hired under the contract for a 2-month term as bylaw enforcement officer, and under The legislation is council's required to appoint him as such, so he has the authority to enforce our bylaws.
Okay, very good. Councillor Parkinson?
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Question, Councillor Parkinson?
Ms. Robert Jones is, have we taken him from another municipality, or?
If memory serves, he is a retired bylaw enforcement officer from Sydney.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have correspondence here for the period of May the 3rd to May the 18th. Move receipt by Councillor Casper. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. The only thing I wouldn't mind is we have the letter from the RCM SAR, and it's regarding the Community Emergency Preparedness and Response. Perhaps at our fire chief's availability, perhaps he could just provide a bit of comment on said report and how that, because it's all part of our emergency services. And while we've receiving this here today, it just would be helpful to receive just his thoughts on the matter. Okay? So, Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just think if we could just pull this letter in regard to speeding up Phillips Road and perhaps refer that to the RCM.
Okay, let's see. That was May the 7th. Email from Ms. Christine Scard regarding speeding on Phillips Road. So maybe we'll make that a, can we make that a subsequent motion?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so for now on everything else then, I'll call the question, motion to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then the request or motion from Councillor Casper is that we refer that.
The correspondence from Christine Discard, re-speeding of Phillips Road, is referred to the local RCM.
Okay, so the email be forwarded. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So we will do that. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Just in regard to these proclamations, are they going to be dealt with? Sorry. Apologize. With these proclamations, is that going to be dealt with or not be dealt with?
These are new. Like sometimes
There's one here, Access Awareness Day, and
yeah.
So I was just curious whether or not you were just going to respond.
I haven't dealt with either. These sort of float in right before I went on vacation, so
Right,
it's sort
okay.
of my first time seeing them. But I'd be more than happy to do either or both of them.
Well, as long as they're not stale dated right now.
That's just it, right?
You know,
they have to be relevant.
Yeah, so I would move that if they are still requested, that a letter or action by your office be dealt with.
Okay, so we can do that. For both of them is your motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll definitely delve into that, and if they're timely, we'll proclaim it. Is there a seconder for that, for the proclamations? Councillor Pearson has seconded that, so we'll look into those two proclamations. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously.
I have another question. How come they got candy over there and we don't?
Because they only seem to be sharing on that side of the table. Clearly, we know what to bring to council meetings going forward. Okay, council verbal reports. Any items to share? I have a couple, but seeing that I don't know where my notes are at the moment, I'll go to Councillor Parkinson.
So on May 15th, I attended the WildWise information and recruitment session at the museum. So actually, I was very pleased to hear about the garbage container at the new development to keep the bears out of going into the garbage, which I think is totally awesome. So I went to this meeting just for information to see what they were all up to, and the next thing you know, I'm on the committee. So May 16th, I went to the district open house for the Demanuel Creek pedestrian crossing, along with Councillor Pearson. Rick, you were there. And so the pedestrian crossing going from Sun River across to the parks looks like it will be a really great addition for the students and the children from Sun Rivers going across. So I think it's a very welcome project, and it was brought up by the Parks and Trails Committee previously. So it's nice to see that project going forward. On May 16th, I attended also the library open house, and I am quite thrilled that our new library looks like it's going to be happening very soon on Lot A, and the style of the library is really interesting, and I think it'll be a wonderful addition. I also attended May 18th the Seniors Summit on Aging with Grace, which was very informative. It was a great presentation. It was a sold-out affair. There were over 100 people there, and it was very informative. On Wednesday, the 23rd of May, I had the Sooke program for the Art Spa Committee meeting. We are going to, we've worked out what we're doing for Communities in Bloom, so that's all falling into place, and I think it'll be really great this year. And we're going to do a drive around and see what other projects we would like to work on before the end of the term. On Sunday, I attended the Sooke Economic Development Group and the Sooke Tourism Region Association. It was an information session on Sooke potentials for wilderness tourism, outdoor recreation, and destination marketing in the region, and there was a big discussion on the hotel taxes. Councillor Pearson and Casper were both in attendance. It was very well attended as well. And then this morning I was at the Fire Training Officers Association conference, where I gave a little speech on behalf of Mayor and Council and welcomed all the delegates to Sooke. And they have 160 registered fire personnel there. So it's a great conference, and they have a lot going on, and everybody seemed to be really thrilled with Sooke. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Any other updates from members of council? She's kind of covered off a few of you. Councillor Pearson?
Along with Councillor Parkinson that she mentioned, there was some good information. She did a great opening this morning to the firefighters that are in our town, and it was well received. So it was very nice. All of the other things I think she mentioned that were really well attended. It was interesting to hear CERTA and the Economic Development Commission that they're starting, and there's some real enthusiasm there. We met at a pretty spectacular location, and I think that there was some really good discussion there. So, anyways, the only other thing that I attended over and above all those was the Sooke Family Resource Society Family Fun Day on Saturday, and go up there and make my donation toward trying to get those airline tickets for anywhere WestJet flies, but not this year again. So, but it was good. It was well attended. There was a lot of people there, and it was a fun celebration. So, anyways, that's it for me.
Other members of council? Councillor Casper?
Yeah, I just want to add, with the forum where the seniors attended, Aging with Grace in our community, as Councillor Parkinson noted, that it was a sold-out event, and I think all in all, based on the afternoon discussions and some of the recommendations that hopefully will come forward to council, that we can move forward on some of those items. And there's been a lot of work, and it'll actually be 10 years this September since that type of forum has taken place in Sooke. So it's been a long time coming, but at the same time, there's been a lot of good work done by the different groups who make up the seniors community in Sooke. So I thought it was well attended. And again, on Sunday with the Economic Development Group and CERTA and the representatives from 4 different organizations that spoke about the potential hotel tax or accommodation tax to deal with the tourism promotion and destination promotion. We are really missing a huge opportunity. As our staff had attended, Brent was there, and I know Ms. Campbell also attended, and that was great to see that. Our Director of Finance, Acting CEO, I think should be noted that he pointed out that the potential amount of money that could be generated from the accommodation tax, which is paid for by visitors, It's not locals who are paying this. And when you look at the exchange rate on the American dollar, really, it's not going to make much difference. Virtually no impact on anybody coming to Sooke. But it would have a huge impact on our community as far as promotion. Some $200,000 could be potentially realized. And there are opportunities to go to Destination BC to get matching grants on an annual basis. So, you know, it's something I really hope that it can be pursued. You know, and I know staff, we did set aside funding last year, and hopefully, you know, we can resurrect that and move forward. So we've got to do something. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Just a really quick, I wanted to give you guys a quick update because it keeps coming up every time we talk about development. Through the Land Use and Development Committee, we've already started discussions and received a presentation about transportation master plans, transportation impact studies. So we're going to be taking that one step further and eventually coming back to council looking at doing an overall sort of Sooke transportation master plan and how we can get all that revisited, because I think our last one was done in 2009, so we've grown substantially since then. We also have talked about the affordable housing policy, and we have briefly talked about what revenue is existing within the District of Sooke and what that looks like going forward, so there'll be grander discussions regarding that as well.
No, that's great to hear. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearson, did you have something else to add? You just turned it off.
Yeah, no, maybe just have a side note, but I know I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but there was an announcement of the fisheries closures today, the sports fishery closure, and it's from Otter Point to, I believe, East Point in Port Renfrew, which significantly impacts our sports fishing here in the Sooke area. So one of the, and we've all got an email tonight actually from Ron Nish, who owns Eagle Eye, who's also a guide outfitter here in town. To continue to promote Sooke, because there's still a lot of fishing areas that will be open and able to fish, and it's very important that we still market ourselves as a fishing destination. It's going to go out with a lot of bad press. It's a significant closure, so we want to make sure that we stay in front of that from communicating with everybody, so that we're still open for business and fishing still will be good.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Pearson. So a few things for myself. I'd like to thank Councillor Berger, who covered off our acting mayor duties, Councillor Parkinson, who spoke this morning, Councillor Casper, who spoke at the seniors event. I was away for a couple of days for UBCM executive meetings and then on vacation just after that down in California. It was interesting being there, just traffic flow, and just seeing the remnants of wildfire activity, and it is very active. It was actually colder there than it was up here, and then I come back and our rating has moved into extreme. So I think it's just something we just message out people to really be vigilant. Today on my drive, I saw cigarettes going out of windows, and it's still happening. It's a risk for our community. In regards to the Demaumiel Creek crossing and the library, my understanding is that there will be reports coming to council in short order on how we can move forward on those, so that's good to hear. I did notice upon my return that Canada's most southwestern signalized intersection is now fully operational in all directions, and that's at Otter Point, Sooke, West Coast Road, and Murray. So that's been 14 months in the making. Probably about 70-some emails to see that through. So thank you, Mr. Howitt, for your patience with me and for the ministry staff. And we pushed for it when the roundabout first happened, and the ministry then didn't pick up on it, but now they have, and it's great because it's been an immediate impact to flows and safety in that particular area. There was an announcement today on CFAX about some work happening at Sooke River Road, and I guess that was the ministry doing some geotechnical work. I understanding that in sort of mid-June, the ministry is looking to plan that open house where they're sharing the corridor study and their design plan for that, as well as to obtain updates. So the date's been bouncing around and moving, so I think once we have that all confirmed, then we can media release it out and just share the timing, the event, the location, and then it'll be a firm date. What is firm is that June 16th will be the public engagement event for the health planning. So you may notice on the Sooke website, there's sooke.ca/health. The Sooke planning document is now live there, and this was the result of community stakeholders, Island Health, South Island Division of Family Practice, Primary Health Working Services Group, the Sooke Planning Steering Committee all gave input, as well as the stakeholders, meaning the physicians, the midwives, any healthcare practitioners. That came from an event last fall, and then it sort of laid out short and medium-term objectives, and then it had to be vetted by all the stakeholders before it became public. So that's now a live document. And the intent there is to now share it and get some public engagement on it. There's been several media announcements that have occurred recently from the ministry on hiring of more doctors, funding for nurse practitioners. We do have paramedicine landed in Sooke now. Also on primary health care networks, urgent care networks. I'm just waiting with some anticipation to see where Sooke falls in that. So I've put a bit of a push to obtain a meeting with the Minister of Health, because what's happening, I'm in a wait-and-see mode, and it's borderline annoying. And so I'm just looking to hear what that says, and then I can either be excited or angry. And we'll just see what that outcome is. There's been tremendous effort to date, so just waiting to see how that lands. And hopefully we'll have something to share, but it's all contingent on what the ministry is going to release. So hopefully we'll get something more on that very soon. And other than that, it's business as normal. We're all back at it, so thank you very much. And that brings us to no notice of motions, no in camera, so a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Casper. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much.